Get rid of it or don't. Either way, I'm done here. Daniel Morrison slammed his coffee cup on the diner counter so hard it cracked. Coffee splashed across the laminate, dripping onto Emma's shoes, but he was already walking away. He did not look back. He did not care that every trucker in the Crossroads diner had stopped eating to stare. He pushed through the glass doors and climbed into his truck and drove out of Emma Collins's life forever. She stood there with her hand pressed against her stomach where his child was growing and watched the taillights disappear into the Colorado morning. 7 months later, that same Emma would receive a phone call that would shatter everything she believed about her past. A dying stranger would claim to be her grandfather. He would confess to watching her entire life from the shadows. And he would reveal a secret so devastating that it would change the meaning of every tear she had ever cried. My name is Emma Collins. I grew up believing I was completely alone in this world. I was wrong. But the truth was far more painful than the lie. If this story touches your heart, please subscribe to my channel and follow along until the very end. Drop a comment telling me which city you are watching from. I want to see how far this story of family betrayal and forgiveness can travel. Now let me take you back to where everything began to unravel. The morning Daniel Morrison destroyed Emma's world started like every other Tuesday at the Crossroads Diner. Emma had been on her feet since 5 in the morning, pouring coffee for truckers who looked through her like she was furniture. Her lower back ached, her ankles were swelling, and hidden in her locker in the back room, wrapped in a paper towel like a dirty secret, was a pregnancy test with 2 pink lines that had changed everything 3 days ago. She had not told anyone yet. She had barely admitted it to herself. Daniel came in at 7:30 like he always did. Black coffee, wheat toast, that smile that had made her feel special for 6 months. He worked at the auto body shop across the highway, and when he looked at her, really looked at her, she felt like maybe she was not invisible after all. "You've been weird lately," he said, watching her pour his coffee. His eyes were sharp this morning, suspicious. "Jumpy, distracted. What's going on with you?" Emma's hand trembled. A few drops of coffee splashed onto the counter. "I need to tell you something," she said quietly. "Can we talk after my shift? Somewhere private. Just tell me now." "Daniel, please. This isn't the kind of thing I want to say in front of everyone." He leaned back in his chair and crossed his arms. "Emma, just say it." She looked around the diner. Hank Williams was playing on the old jukebox. 2 truckers were arguing about football at the counter. Margaret Chen, the owner, was in the back doing inventory. Nobody was paying attention to them. Emma leaned closer and lowered her voice to barely a whisper. "I'm pregnant." The word landed between them like a bomb. Daniel's face went through changes she had never seen before. Surprise first, then confusion, then something cold and hard settling into his features like concrete setting. "You're joking." "I'm not joking. I took the test 3 days ago. I've been trying to figure out how to tell you how to... How do you even know it's mine?" The question hit her like a slap. Emma actually stepped backward, bumping into the coffee station behind her. "What did you just say to me?" "You heard me." Daniel's voice had turned ugly. "You work in a truck stop diner, Emma. Strange men come through here every single day. How am I supposed to know what you do when I'm not around?" "Daniel, you're the only person I've been with. You know that. I told you about my past, about growing up in foster care, about how hard it is for me to trust anyone. You know I would never." Do I really know that?" He stood up from his stool, and suddenly he seemed much taller than she remembered. Much colder. "Look, I don't know what you want from me. Money, a ring. Some kind of fairy tale ending where we play house together." "I don't want anything. I just thought you should know. I thought we could figure this out together, like adults, like people who care about each other." Daniel laughed. It was the cruelest sound Emma had ever heard. "Care about each other? Emma, we've been hooking up for 6 months. That's not a relationship. That's not a family. That's just 2 people killing time." He threw a $5 bill on the counter. "You want to keep it? That's your choice, but don't expect me to be part of it." "Daniel, wait, please. Just think about this. We don't have to decide anything right now. We can talk about it. We can figure out our options. We can..." He grabbed his jacket and turned toward the door. "Daniel." He stopped. For one moment, one heartbeat, Emma thought he might turn around, might see her, might remember all those nights they had spent talking about their dreams, their fears, their hopes for something better. Instead, he spoke without looking back. "Get rid of it or don't. Either way, I'm done here." The door slammed behind him. Emma stood frozen, watching through the window as he climbed into his truck. The engine roared to life. The taillights flared red. And then he was gone, disappearing down the highway like he had never existed at all. The coffee pot slipped from Emma's fingers and shattered on the floor. She did not even feel the hot liquid splashing her legs. She did not hear Margaret rushing out from the back room asking what happened. She did not notice the truckers staring at her with a mixture of pity and uncomfortable curiosity. All she could see was the empty parking space where Daniel's truck had been. All she could feel was the tiny flutter in her stomach, the baby that did not know its father had just abandoned it before it was even born. Emma, honey, look at me. Margaret's face swam into focus. The older woman was gripping her shoulders, concern etched deep into her weathered features. I'm fine, Emma heard herself say. I just dropped the pot. I'm sorry. I'll clean it up. I'll pay for it out of my tips. Forget the pot. What did that boy say to you? I saw him leave. I saw your face. Nothing. It was nothing. Just a disagreement. Margaret's eyes dropped to Emma's stomach, then back to her face. Understanding dawned in them, slow and sad. Oh, honey, how far along are you? Emma's composure cracked. The tears came before she could stop them, hot and humiliating, streaming down her face in front of everyone. About 8 weeks. I just found out. I thought he would. I thought we could. She could not finish. Margaret pulled her into a fierce hug, heedless of the coffee soaking into both their aprons. That boy was never worth the air he breathed, Margaret said firmly. I've seen his type 100 times. All charm until things get complicated, then gone like smoke in the wind. You're better off without him. I'm pregnant, Emma sobbed. I'm pregnant and alone, and I have nothing. No family, no savings, no plan. What am I going to do? Margaret held her tighter. You're going to survive. That's what you're going to do. Same thing you've been doing your whole life, and you're not as alone as you think. But Emma knew that was not true. She had been alone since she was 8 years old when her mother died, and no one came to claim her. She had been alone through 11 foster homes, through aging out of the system at 18, through years of working double shifts just to afford a room above a laundromat. She was alone. She had always been alone, and now she was bringing a child into that same loneliness. Margaret sent her home early that day. Emma did not argue. She walked to her tiny rented room in a daze, climbed the narrow stairs, and lay down on her twin bed without even taking off her coffee-stained uniform. She stayed there for 3 days. She called in sick to work something she had never done in 4 years of waitressing. She ate crackers when her stomach demanded it and drank water from the bathroom tap down the hall. She stared at the ceiling and tried to imagine a future that did not terrify her. She was 24 years old, pregnant, abandoned, living in a room the size of a closet with $200 in savings and no one in the world who would notice if she disappeared. The pregnancy test was still in her locker at work. She should probably throw it away. She should probably make a doctor's appointment. She should probably start figuring out how to support a child when she could barely support herself. Instead, she lay in bed and remembered her mother. Sarah Collins had been beautiful once before the grief and the pills had hollowed her out. Emma remembered flashes from early childhood, warm arms, a soft voice singing lullabies, a music box that played Claire de Lune while gentle fingers stroked her hair. Then her father had died when Emma was 5 and everything had started falling apart. The memories after that were darker. Her mother crying in the bathroom, strangers coming to their apartment at odd hours, moving from place to place, each one smaller and dirtier than the last. Her mother's eyes growing emptier, her hugs growing less frequent, her presence fading even when she was physically there. And then the motel room, the terrible stillness. The ambulance lights painting the walls red and blue while Emma sat in the corner and tried to understand why her mother would not wake up. She had been 8 years old. The social workers had told her that her mother had no family, no relatives to claim her, no grandparents or aunts or uncles waiting in the wings. She was alone in the world, they said, but that was okay because the foster system would take care of her. The foster system had not taken care of her. 11 homes in 10 years. Some were merely neglectful, others were actively cruel. She learned early that hope was a trap, that promises meant nothing, that the only person she could ever truly count on was herself. Now, lying in her tiny room, with a baby growing inside her, so Emma wondered if she was destined to repeat her mother's story. Another woman alone with a child she could not properly care for. Another cycle of poverty and desperation and failure. No. She sat up suddenly, her jaw tightening with determination. She would not be her mother. She would not let grief and fear destroy her. She would find a way to make this work, to build a life for her child, to break the cycle that had broken so many before her. She did not know how yet. But she would figure it out. She always figured it out. 3 weeks later, everything changed. Emma was on her afternoon break sitting in the storage room behind the kitchen eating a sandwich she had made from leftover bread and whatever she could scrounge from the employee refrigerator. Her uniform was getting tight around her middle now, and she had started wearing her apron higher to hide the growing bump. Her phone rang. Unknown number. Colorado area code, but not one she recognized. She almost let it go to voicemail. Unknown numbers usually meant bill collectors or scammers, and she had no patience for either. But something made her answer. Hello. Is this Emma Rose Collins? A woman's voice, professional and precise, with an undercurrent of urgency. Who's asking? My name is Patricia Holloway. I'm an attorney based in Harvest Creek, Colorado. I'm calling on behalf of a client named Walter Bennett. Emma frowned. I don't know anyone named Walter Bennett. I understand. This is going to sound strange, Miss Collins, and I apologize for that, but Mr. Bennett has been searching for you for quite some time. He claims to be your grandfather. The sandwich fell from Emma's hands. That's impossible. I don't have any family. My mother died when I was 8, and I was told she had no relatives. I've been alone my whole life. I know what you were told. Patricia's voice softened slightly. Mr. Bennett is aware of that as well. He says it's not the whole truth. He says there are things you need to know, things he should have told you years ago. Emma's heart was pounding now hard and fast, making it difficult to breathe. This is some kind of scam. I don't know what you want, but I don't have any money, and I'm not giving you my social security number or... Miss Collins, please, I'm not asking for anything except your time. Mr. Bennett is dying. He has terminal pancreatic cancer, and the doctors say he has perhaps a week left, possibly less. He's been fighting to stay alive long enough to speak with you. Even if what you're saying is true, why now, if this man is really my grandfather? Why did he wait until he was dying to reach out? Why didn't he come for me when my mother died? Why did he let me spend 16 years thinking I was completely alone? Those are exactly the questions he wants to answer. He has things he needs to tell you, Miss Collins. Things that will change how you understand your entire life. Emma was shaking now. She pressed her free hand against the wall to steady herself. How do I know this is real? How do I know you're not just trying to trick me somehow? Mr. Bennett anticipated that question. He told me to give you a message, something he said would prove he's telling the truth. Patricia paused. He said to tell you that he has your mother's music box, the one that plays Claire de Lune. The world stopped. Emma could not breathe, could not think, could not do anything except stand there, with the phone pressed to her ear, while her entire understanding of her life crumbled around her. The music box, the one her mother had wound every night, the one that had disappeared after her mother's death, assumed to be thrown away with everything else. Someone had kept it. Someone had known about it. Someone had been connected to her mother all along. Miss Collins, Emma, are you still there? I'm here. Her voice sounded strained, distant, like it belonged to someone else. I'm here. Tell me where I need to go. Patricia gave her the address of the Harvest Creek Hospice Center. She offered to arrange transportation, hotel rooms, whatever Emma needed, all expenses paid by Walter Bennett's estate. He's been preparing for this meeting for a long time, Patricia said. He wants to make it as easy as possible for you. Easy, Emma laughed bitterly. Nothing about this is easy. I know, but Emma, whatever you learn when you get here, whatever Walter tells you, I want you to know something. He's not a bad man. He made terrible mistakes, mistakes that cost him everything that mattered. But he spent the rest of his life trying to atone. Whatever judgment you pass on him, he's already passed on himself 1,000 times over. Emma did not know what to say to that. She wrote down the address, confirmed she would leave the next morning, and ended the call. Then she sat in the storage room for a very long time, staring at the wall while her mind raced. A grandfather. A dying man who claimed to have watched her entire life from a distance. A music box that had survived when everything else from her childhood had been lost. What did it mean? What had really happened to her mother? And why had this man, this Walter Bennett, let her grow up believing she had no one? The questions spun through her head like a carousel that would not stop. But underneath the confusion and the anger and the fear, something else was stirring. Something she had not allowed herself to feel in a very long time. Hope. Maybe she was not alone after all. Maybe there was someone out there connected to her by blood, by history, by the simple fact of shared existence. Maybe her baby would have a family after all. It was a dangerous thought. Emma knew better than to let herself hope. Hope always led to disappointment. Hope was how you got your heart broken. But she could not stop the feeling from spreading through her chest like warmth from a fire she had thought was dead. Tomorrow she would drive to Harvest Creek. She would meet this dying stranger who claimed to be her grandfather. She would learn the truth about her mother, about herself, about the family she had never known. And nothing would ever be the same. The drive to Harvest Creek took Emma through landscapes she had never seen before. She left Denver before sunrise, her old Honda Civic packed with everything she owned, which was pathetically little. A duffel bag of clothes, a box of books, the tips she had saved over the past month, $327 in small bills. The highway climbed into the mountains, winding through passes where wildflowers bloomed purple and yellow along the roadside. She passed small towns with names like Silver Ridge and Copper Valley, places that seemed frozen in time, unchanged, for decades. Her phone's GPS guided her off the interstate and onto increasingly narrow roads. The last 20 miles were on unpaved gravel that made her old car shudder and groan. And then she was there. Harvest Creek announced itself with a simple wooden sign, "Welcome to Harvest Creek, population 2847, where neighbors are family." Emma stared at those words for a long moment before driving on. Where neighbors are family. What did this town know about her family that she did not? The hospice center was on the edge of town, a single-story building surrounded by gardens that seemed lovingly maintained. Pink roses climbed a trellis near the entrance. Wind chimes sang in the afternoon breeze. Emma parked her car and sat there for 15 minutes, gripping the steering wheel, trying to gather the courage to go inside. She was about to meet her grandfather, a man who had apparently known about her for her entire life, a man who had chosen not to be part of that life until now, until he was dying and had run out of time. The anger helped, actually. It gave her something to hold on to, something sharper than fear. She got out of the car and walked through the front doors. The reception area was quiet and peaceful, designed to soothe. Soft lighting watercolor paintings of mountain scenes, the faint scent of lavender. A woman in her 50s approached immediately. Silver-streaked hair pulled back in a professional bun, wire-rimmed glasses, a cardigan despite the warm weather. "You must be Emma. I'm Patricia Holloway. Thank you for coming." Her handshake was firm but warm. Emma searched her face for signs of deception and found only something that looked like genuine compassion. "He's been asking for you every hour," Patricia continued. "The nurses say he refuses to take his pain medication because he doesn't want to be drowsy when you arrive. He's fighting hard to stay present." "Good for him." Emma's voice came out harsher than she intended. "He should be uncomfortable. He has a lot to answer for." Patricia did not flinch. "I know you're angry. You have every right to be. But Emma, whatever you think of Walter Bennett, please try to listen with an open mind. He's not trying to excuse what he did. He's trying to explain it. There's a difference." She led Emma down a quiet hallway. Their footsteps were muffled by carpet. They passed rooms with doors partially open, offering glimpses of other families gathered around beds, holding hands, saying their final goodbyes. Patricia stopped outside room 112. "Before we go in, I need to prepare you. Walter has lost a lot of weight. The cancer has progressed rapidly. He looks very different from the man he used to be." "I don't know what he used to be. I don't know anything about him." "That's exactly what he wants to change." Patricia put her hand on the door. "Are you ready?" No, Emma would never be ready for this, but she nodded anyway. Patricia opened the door. The room was small but comfortable. A hospital bed near a window that looked out over the gardens. Medical equipment humming quietly. A rocking chair in the corner. A cardboard box on the floor that looked out of place in the clinical setting. And in the bed, a man who looked like death itself. He was skeletal. Wasted. His skin had a yellowish tint, and his face was all sharp angles and deep hollows. He looked 100 years old, though Patricia had told her he was only 81. But his eyes. When those eyes opened and found Emma's face, something sparked to life in them. Something fierce and desperate and painfully alive. "Emma." His voice was barely a whisper, rough as sandpaper. "You came. Thank God. Thank God." She stood frozen in the doorway, unable to move forward or back. "You look just like her." Tears began streaming down his ravaged face. "Just like my Sarah. Same eyes, same face, same stubborn jaw. I'd know you anywhere. I'd know you in a crowd of thousands." His hand reached toward her, trembling so violently it seemed impossible he had any strength left at all. "Please, come closer. Let me see you properly. Let me look at my granddaughter while I still can." Emma forced her legs to carry her to the chair beside his bed. She sat down heavily, her own hands gripping the armrests like anchors. "I don't understand any of this. The social workers told me my mother had no family. They told me I was alone." "The social workers were told what I wanted them to believe." Walter's voice cracked. "I lied, Emma, about everything. I let them think Sarah had no one because I was too much of a coward to come forward and claim you, because I was too ashamed of what I'd done to face the consequences." "What did you do? Walter closed his eyes. Fresh tears leaked from beneath his eyelids, following the deep grooves of his face. I killed my daughter, not with my hands, but with my pride, with my stubbornness, with my inability to forgive her for choosing a life I didn't approve of. His eyes opened again, and in them Emma saw a pain that went far beyond his physical illness. This was the pain of a man who had lived with unbearable guilt for 16 years. A man who had watched himself destroy everything that mattered and been powerless to stop. I need to tell you everything, he said, from the very beginning. I need you to understand how we got here, how I failed you, how I failed her. And then if you want to walk out of this room and never see me again, I'll understand. But you deserve to know the truth. You've always deserved to know. Emma's anger was still there, burning bright in her chest. But underneath it, something else was stirring. The same hope she had felt the night before, dangerous and fragile. Tell me, she said. Tell me everything. And Walter Bennett began to talk. He told her about Sarah, his only child, born on a spring morning in 1971 when the apple trees on the farm were blooming white and the whole world seemed full of promise. His wife Eleanor had nearly died giving birth. There would be no more children. Sarah was their miracle, their everything, the center of their universe. She was beautiful from the first moment, Walter said. Even covered in blood, even screaming at the indignity of being born, she was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. I held her in my arms and I promised I would protect her from everything bad in this world. I would give her everything she ever needed. Eleanor died when Sarah was 3. Cancer, the same disease that was now claiming Walter. After that, it was just the two of us. Me and my little girl against the world. I raised her alone on this farm, taught her to ride horses before she could walk properly, taught her to play the piano that had belonged to her mother. She had talent, Emma. Real talent. Her music teacher said she could go to conservatory, could have a career as a performer. His face twisted with old regret. I had such plans for her. College, a career, a good marriage to someone worthy of her. I was going to give her all the opportunities I never had. I was going to make sure her life was perfect. But you can't control another person's life, Emma said quietly, no matter how much you love them. No, you can't. But I didn't understand that then. I thought my love gave me the right to make decisions for us. I thought I knew best because I was her father, because I'd sacrificed everything for her, because I wanted only good things for her future. He told her about Marcus Collins. Marcus had been the son of the town mechanic, a boy from a poor family with a bad reputation. His father drank. His mother had left when he was young. He worked at the auto shop after school instead of participating in sports or clubs or any of the activities that might have given him a path to something better. He was rough around the edges, Walter admitted. Uneducated, unpolished. The kind of boy who made teachers nervous and parents lock their doors at night. But Sarah had seen something else in him. She came home one day, senior year of high school, with stars in her eyes and his name on her lips. Marcus this, Marcus that. He was kind, she said. He was funny. He understood her in ways no one else did. He made her feel like she could be herself, not just the perfect daughter I expected her to be. Walter's hands clenched the bedsheets. I forbade her from seeing him. I told her she was throwing away her future, that a boy like that would only drag her down, that she was too good for him, and he was too damaged to ever be the man she deserved. What did she say? She said I didn't understand love. She said I'd forgotten what it felt like to care about someone so much that nothing else mattered. She said she would rather be poor and happy with Marcus than rich and miserable without him. The arguments had escalated over the following months. Screaming matches that shook the farmhouse walls. Threats and ultimatums from Walter, tearful defiance from Sarah. The relationship that had once been so close, so loving, deteriorating into something bitter and broken. Then she told me she was pregnant. Walter's voice dropped to barely a whisper. She was 18 years old, a month away from graduation with a full scholarship to the University of Colorado. And she came to me crying, scared out of her mind, asking for my help and my understanding. What did you do? The question hung in the air between them. Emma already knew the answer would be terrible. She could see it in the way Walter's face contorted with shame. I gave her an ultimatum. End the pregnancy and break up with Marcus, or get out of my house and never come back. Emma's hand went involuntarily to her own stomach where her baby was growing. The baby whose father had abandoned her with almost identical words. She was 18, Emma said, pregnant and scared. And you threw her out. I didn't throw her out, I gave her a choice. But it was no choice at all. Was it? I told my pregnant teenage daughter to kill her baby or lose her home. Told her to abandon the man she loved or be dead to me forever. Walter's voice broke. I thought I was protecting her. I thought I knew what was best. I was so certain I was right. You weren't right. No, I was a fool and a tyrant and a terrible father, and Sarah saw that more clearly than I did. She had chosen Marcus, chosen the baby, chosen love over security, family over wealth, her own heart over her father's expectations. She packed a bag that night and walked out the front door. I stood on the porch and watched her go, waiting for her to turn around, to come back to apologize and admit I'd been right all along. Walter's tears fell freely now. She never turned around. She just kept walking into the darkness until I couldn't see her anymore. That was the last time Walter Bennett saw his daughter alive. But it was not the end of his story. I couldn't let her go completely, he confessed. Even after everything, I couldn't stop loving her. So I did something shameful. I hired a private investigator to follow her, to send me reports on her life. Sarah and Marcus had moved to Denver. They got married at the courthouse a week after arriving. Marcus found work as a mechanic while Sarah gave piano lessons and sang at weddings to earn extra money. The investigator sent me photos, reports, details about their daily lives. Walter shook his head slowly. I told myself I just wanted to make sure she was safe. But really I was waiting. Waiting for everything to fall apart so she would come crawling back to me. Did you ever reach out to her? Ever try to apologize? No, I wrote letters, dozens of them over the years, but I never sent them. I was too proud to be the one to bend first. I kept thinking she should apologize to me. She was the one who had defied me after all. She was the one who had made the wrong choice. His laugh was bitter and broken. The wrong choice. She chose Love Emma. She chose you. That was never wrong. I was wrong. I was wrong about everything. The investigators' reports had tracked Emma's birth. First birthday, first steps, first day of school. I have all of them still, every photo, every report. I watched you grow up from a distance, learned your name and your face and the way you smiled. But I never did anything about it, never reached out, never tried to be part of your life. Why not be? Fear, the same fear that had kept me from reconciling with Sarah. What if you rejected me? What if you hated me? What if you asked questions I couldn't answer, held me accountable for things I couldn't defend? Walter's voice dropped. It was easier to watch from a distance. Easier to tell myself I was being noble, staying out of your life for your own good. But really, I was just a coward. Then Marcus had been killed. Drunk driver, red light. It happened so fast there was nothing anyone could do. Walter's face was gray with remembered grief. Marcus was dead at 28 years old, leaving Sarah alone with a 5-year-old daughter to raise. Emma did the math in her head. She had been 5 when her father died. She barely remembered him. Just impressions. Strong arms lifting her up, a deep laugh that made her feel safe, the smell of motor oil and something sweet. After Marcus died, everything fell apart. Sarah had spiraled into grief. The pills came first, prescribed for anxiety and sleeplessness. Then stronger things when the prescriptions ran out. She lost her piano students, lost their apartment, lost everything she and Marcus had built together. I watched it happen, Walter said. Through the investigators' reports, I watched my daughter destroy herself inch by inch. I saw photos of her standing in line at food banks, looking thinner each time, looking emptier. I knew she was drowning and I did nothing. You could have helped her. Emma's voice was shaking now. You could have sent money. You could have reached out. I could have done 100 things differently. Instead, I sat in my farmhouse reading reports about my daughter's destruction and told myself it wasn't my place to interfere. She had made her choice, I said. She had to live with the consequences. He closed his eyes. The truth is, I was still punishing her. After all those years after watching her suffer, I was still waiting for her to apologize. Still waiting for her to admit I'd been right. I would have let her die before I'd be the first one to bend. And she did die. Yes, she did. The silence that followed us was heavy with 16 years of grief and guilt. Tell me about the night she died, Emma finally said. Tell me everything. Walter opened his eyes. In them was a pain so profound it seemed impossible that any human being could carry it and still go on living. The night your mother died, she called me. The words fell into the room like stones into still water. She called at 2:17 in the morning. I was asleep. The phone rang and rang until the answering machine picked up, and then I heard her voice coming through the speaker. She was crying, begging, saying she was sorry that she'd made terrible mistakes, that she needed help. He had gotten out of bed and picked up the phone. his daughter's voice broken and desperate after 8 years of silence. She asked if she could come home. If you could come home. She said she knew she'd been wrong about some things, that she'd made choices that had hurt everyone, that she understood now why I'd been so worried about her future. Emma was crying too now. She could picture it. Her mother in that motel room alone and afraid, reaching out one final time to the father who had rejected her. "What did you say?" Walter's face crumpled. "I said I needed time to think about it. I told her to call me in the morning and we'd figure something out, and then I hung up the phone." "No." The word came out as a whisper. "I hung up on my dying daughter. I told her to wait. After 8 years of silence, she reached out for help, and I told her I needed time to think." She was asking to come home. She was asking for forgiveness. I know, and I was still punishing her, still wielding my power over her, still needing her to grovel just a little bit more before I deigned to help. Walter's voice broke completely. "I went back to bed, Emma. I actually went back to sleep. I figured I'd call her in the morning when I was rested, when I had time to think about what kind of conditions I'd put on her return." But there was no morning. No, there was no morning. By the time the sun came up, Sarah was dead. The investigator had called Walter at 10 that morning. Overdose in a motel room. Body discovered by housekeeping. Time of death estimated between 4 and 5 a.m., just hours after her phone call. She died alone in a dirty motel room, reaching for a phone that would never ring again. Walter's sob was the sound of a man whose heart had shattered years ago and never healed. My baby girl died believing her father didn't love her enough to save her, and she was right. I didn't love her enough. I loved my pride more. Emma sat in stunned silence, tears streaming down her face. She had spent 16 years believing her mother died because of her addiction, because she was weak, because she had no one to turn to. But the truth was so much worse. Her mother had tried. At the very end, she had found the courage to reach out. She had swallowed her pride, called her father, asked for help, and he had told her to wait. One word, wait. A few hours' delay that had cost Sarah her life and Emma her childhood. "The social workers came for you the next day." Walter continued, his voice hollow. "They found you in the motel room. You'd been sitting with her body for hours before anyone realized something was wrong." Emma remembered. She remembered the cold, the stillness, the way her mother's hand had felt wrong when she tried to hold it. "I drove to Denver that afternoon. I parked outside the social services building and watched them take you inside. This little girl with red eyes and messy hair holding a garbage bag full of your belongings, looking like the whole world had ended. But you didn't come in." "No. I sat in my truck for 3 hours trying to work up the courage. But every time I reached for the door handle, I thought about what I'd done. I thought about the fact that you were an orphan because of me, that your mother was dead because I'd told her to wait, that you would grow up without anyone because I'd been too proud to say yes when it mattered." Walter reached for her hand. Emma let him take it, too numb to resist. "I convinced myself you were better off without me, that I would only bring more pain, that the best thing I could do was stay away and let you build a new life with a nice family who could love you properly. That's not what happened." "I know. The foster system failed you over and over again. I read the reports. I know about the homes that neglected you, the placements that fell through the years of instability and loneliness." His grip on her hand tightened. "And I could have prevented all of it. At any point I could have come forward and claimed you, but I was too much of a coward." Emma pulled her hand away and stood up. She walked to the window, her back to the dying man, looking out at the gardens where roses bloomed in ignorant beauty. "I spent 16 years believing I was worthless, believing nobody wanted me, believing there was something fundamentally wrong with me that made me unlovable." Her voice was cold and hard. "Do you know what that does to a person? Do you know how it feels to be passed from home to home like an unwanted piece of furniture?" "No, I can't imagine it. I can only tell you that I'm sorry, and I know that's not enough. It will never be enough." "You're right. It's not enough." Emma turned to face him. "I was 8 years old. 8. I didn't understand why my mother was gone or why no one came for me. I used to lie awake at night imagining that I had a family somewhere, that one day someone would show up and take me away from the group homes and the bad foster parents. That fantasy was the only thing that kept me going sometimes." "Emma, and you were out there the whole time, watching, sending money, playing the benevolent ghost while I suffered." Her voice rose. "Do you have any idea how much I needed you, not your money? You, a real person, a real family member, someone to tell me I wasn't alone." Walter had no defense. He lay there broken and ductless and dying, accepting her fury like a punishment he had earned. "I know what I did was unforgivable," he said quietly. "I've known it for 16 years. I've lived with this guilt every single day, and I'll die with it tonight, or tomorrow, or whenever God finally lets me go. There's nothing you can say that I haven't said to myself 1,000 times. Then why did you call me here? Why now, after all these years? Because you deserve to know the truth. Because I couldn't die with this secret locked inside me, couldn't let you spend the rest of your life believing the lie I told. And because..." He stopped, his eyes fixed on her stomach, on the swell that was visible now beneath her loose sweater. "Because you're pregnant," he said, "aren't you?" Emma's hand went automatically to her belly. "How did you..." "The way you stand, the way your hand keeps drifting to your middle." His eyes filled with fresh tears. "You're carrying my great-grandchild, the next generation of this broken family." The words hung in the air between them. Emma had not told anyone about her pregnancy except Daniel and Margaret. She had not even begun to think about how it connected to this larger story of family and betrayal. But of course it connected. Everything connected. She was pregnant and alone, just like her mother had been. Abandoned by the baby's father, just like her mother had been. Standing at a crossroads between her past and her future with no one to guide her. Except now, there was someone. This dying man who had failed her mother but was desperate not to fail her. "I'm 7 months along," she heard herself say. "The father left when I told him. Said it wasn't his problem." Walter's face twisted with something that looked like physical pain. History repeating itself. Generation after generation of men who can't handle responsibility. Of women left alone to pick up the pieces. He struggled to sit up straighter. "But it doesn't have to be that way for you, Emma. That's why I called you here. That's why I need you to listen to what I have to say." He gestured to Patricia, who had slipped into the room at some point. She brought him the cardboard box from the corner and helped him pull out a stack of documents. "I'm leaving everything to you. The farm, the house, all of my savings. Everything I own." Emma stared at him. "What?" "It's yours. It should have been yours all along. Should have been Sarah's and then yours after her. But I kept it from you because I was too ashamed to face what I'd done." He held out the papers. "The farm is 320 acres of prime agricultural land. The house was built in 1892 by my great-grandfather. There's savings investments, everything a person would need to build a real life." Emma did not move to take the documents. "I don't want your money. I didn't come here for an inheritance." "I know. That's part of why I'm giving it to you." Walter's voice was urgent now, desperate. "Emma, you're about to have a baby. You're alone. You're working at a truck stop diner and living above a laundromat. I know because I've had investigators checking on you, same as I did with your mother." The revelation sent a fresh wave of anger through her. "You've been watching me too, all this time knowing where I was, what I was going through, and still doing nothing. Yes, because I was the same coward I've always been. But Emma, I'm trying to change that now. I'm trying to give you and your child a future, a home, a place where you can put down roots and build something real." He pressed the papers into her hands. "The land has been in our family for 5 generations. Your mother grew up there. Your grandmother is buried in the little cemetery behind the house. It's your history, Emma, your roots. And it can be your future too, if you want it." Emma looked down at the documents. Legal papers, property deeds, bank statements showing numbers that made her head spin. "There's more," Walter said. "In the box. Letters I wrote to your mother over the years. Letters I wrote to you, and something else. Something your mother left behind." Patricia reached into the box and pulled out a yellow envelope. "This was found with Sarah's body," she said gently. "It was addressed to you. Walter has kept it all these years, waiting for the day he could give it to you." Emma took the envelope with trembling hands. Her mother's handwriting on the front faded but still legible. "For Emma." "I've never opened it," Walter said. "It wasn't for me. It was for you." Whatever she wanted to say at the end, those were her words for her daughter. Emma stared at the envelope. Her mother's final message, 16 years in waiting. "Read it," Walter urged. "Please. I need to know what she said before I die. I need to know if she found any peace at the end." Emma's fingers trembled as she opened the envelope. The paper inside was thin, fragile with age, covered in handwriting that slanted with urgency and desperation. She began to read aloud. "My dearest Emma, if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and I'm so sorry. I'm sorry for everything I put you through. I'm sorry I wasn't strong enough to beat this darkness that keeps pulling me under. I'm sorry I couldn't be the mother you deserved. But I need you to know some things, baby girl. Things I should have told you every single day. You are the best thing that ever happened to me. From the moment I knew you were growing inside me, you gave me a reason to keep fighting. Your father and I used to lie in bed and talk about all the things we wanted to give you, all the dreams we had for your future. When he died, those dreams kept me going. You kept me going. I failed you. I know that. The pills, the chaos, the instability. I let my grief and my demons take over, and you paid the price. If I could go back and do it differently, I would. I would be stronger. I would get help sooner. I would put you first the way you always deserved. Your grandfather is a complicated man. He hurt me deeply, and for a long time I hated him for it. But as I've gotten older, as I've faced my own failures as a parent, I've come to understand him better. He loved me in the only way he knew how, even if that way was wrong. His pride destroyed our family, but underneath that pride was a father who was terrified of losing his daughter. He just didn't know how to hold on without crushing. I'm going to call him tonight. I'm going to ask if we can come home. I don't know if he'll say yes, but I have to try. For you, baby girl. You deserve better than this life I've given you. If something happens to me, if this is goodbye, I want you to know that you come from love. Your father loved you more than his own life. I love you more than anything in this world. And somewhere underneath all his stubbornness and fear, your grandfather loves you too. Don't let anger poison you the way it poisoned us. Don't let pride steal your chance at happiness. Choose love, Emma. Choose connection. Choose forgiveness even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard? You are worthy of love. You have always been worthy. Don't let anyone, including yourself, tell you otherwise. I have to go now. I have to make that call. I love you forever and always. Mom, Emma's voice broke on the last word. She sat with the letter clutched in her hands, tears falling onto the paper, her mother's final words blurring before her eyes. She had been loved. Her mother had loved her, had been thinking of her, fighting for her, trying to give her a better future right up until the very end. And Walter had said, wait. She looked at her grandfather, this dying man who had carried this letter for 16 years, who had known what Sarah was feeling, what she was hoping for in the final hours of her life. She forgave you, Emma whispered. She understood you, and you still said wait. I know, Walter's voice was barely audible. I've read those words 1,000 times. Underneath all his stubbornness and fear, your grandfather loves you too. She knew I loved her, even though I'd shown it in the worst possible ways, and I still couldn't save her. He reached for Emma's hand one more time. But I can try to save you, not from anything as dramatic as what your mother faced, but from the loneliness, from the struggle, from having to raise a child alone with nothing and no one to support you. Emma looked at his hand, gnarled and spotted with age, trembling with the effort of reaching toward her. She thought about her mother's letter, the plea to choose love over anger, to choose forgiveness over pride. She thought about her baby growing inside her, inheriting all of this complicated history. She thought about the farm, the house, the roots she had never known she had, and she took her grandfather's hand. I don't forgive you, she said clearly. What you did was terrible. The consequences destroyed lives. I may never fully forgive you for any of it. Walter nodded, tears streaming down his face. I understand. But I'm here. I'm listening, and I'm not going to let pride keep me from giving my child a better future. Emma squeezed his hand. Tell me more about the farm. Tell me about my mother's childhood. Tell me everything you can before you go. Walter's face transformed. The pain was still there, the guilt, the grief. But underneath it all, something that looked almost like peace began to emerge. Thank you, he whispered. Thank you for letting me tell you. Thank you for being here at the end. They talked until the sun went down. Walter told her stories about Sarah as a little girl, about her grandmother Eleanor, about generations of family who had worked the land and built something lasting. He told her about the farmhouse and its creaky floors, the barn and its resident cats, the apple orchard, and the way it bloomed every spring like a promise being kept. And when his voice finally gave out when the nurses came to adjust his medications and the exhaustion it came too much to fight, Emma stayed. She held his hand while he slept. She read her mother's letter again, memorizing every word. She looked through the box of photographs and documents, seeing her mother as a child, as a teenager, as the young woman who had chosen love over everything else. Around midnight, Walter stirred. Emma, I'm here. The music box. It's in the box. Your mother's music box. Emma dug through the papers until she found it. Small wooden carved with roses, just as she remembered from her earliest memories. She wound the key and opened the lid. Claire de Lune filled the room, soft and haunting and achingly beautiful. Walter smiled, his eyes still closed. She used to play that for you every night. Said it was the only thing that could make you stop crying when you were a baby." "I remember." Emma's voice was thick with tears. "I remember her winding it. I remember the melody." "She loved you so much, Emma. Never doubt that. Whatever else went wrong, whatever mistakes we all made, she loved you more than anything in this world." I know that now." Walter's breathing had changed. The nurses had warned her this would happen, the slowing the spacing between breaths that signaled the end was near. "I'm glad you came," he whispered. "I'm glad I got to see your face. Sarah's face. You're so beautiful, so strong. You're going to be okay." "I'm going to try?" "The baby." His eyes opened one more time, finding hers with surprising clarity. "Name her Sarah, please. Give her a piece of her grandmother." Emma thought about the little girl growing inside her. The 5th generation of this complicated family. "If it's a girl, she said, "I'll name her Sarah Rose, after her grandmother and after the flowers on this music box." Walter smiled. It was the most peaceful expression she had seen on his face since she arrived. "Sarah Rose," he repeated. "That's perfect. That's exactly right." His eyes closed. His grip on her hand loosened. "I love you, Emma. I know I have no right to say that. I know I haven't earned it. But I love you. I've loved you from the moment you were born. I just didn't know how to show it." Emma leaned forward and kissed his forehead. "I know, Grandpa, I know." The word surprised them both. She had never called him that before, had never thought of him as anything but a stranger until this day. But he was not a stranger. He was her grandfather, her family, the last connection she had to the mother she had lost. "Thank you," Walter breathed. "Thank you for calling me that. Rest now. I'll be here. You'll go to the farm. You'll see where your mother grew up. I promise. And you'll read the letters, all of them, the ones I wrote to her and the ones I wrote to you. I promise. And you'll forgive yourself for whatever mistakes you make with your own child. You'll remember that love is messy and imperfect and we all fail the people we care about. But the failing isn't what matters. What matters is that we keep trying, that we never stop trying to do better." Emma was crying openly now. I'll try to remember. That's all any of us can do." Walter's voice was fading, each word requiring more effort than the last. "Try and love, and never let pride keep you from the people who matter." His breathing slowed, steadied, grew shallow. Emma sat beside him, Yisao, through the long hours of the night, holding his hand, playing the music box whenever the melody wound down, watching the grandfather she had just found slip slowly away. He died at 3:47 in the morning, just as the first hint of light was appearing on the horizon. Emma was holding his hand when he took his final breath. She felt the moment his grip went slack, the moment the life left his body, the moment she became truly alone in the world again. But somehow, this time, it felt different. She had come here looking for answers. She had found something more complicated than that. A legacy of love and pain, of terrible mistakes and desperate attempts at redemption. A family history that was messy and imperfect and utterly human. And she had found something else too, something she had not expected. She had found a place to belong. The farm was waiting for her, her mother's childhood home, her grandmother's grave. Generations of history rooted in the Colorado soil, and growing inside her a new generation. A baby who would inherit all of this complicated legacy, but who could also help her break the cycle. Emma sat with Walter's body until the nurses came. She did not cry anymore. She had cried enough for one night. Instead, she thought about the future. About the farm she had never seen, but that was now hers. About the child she would raise there, surrounded by the ghosts of family members who had loved imperfectly but fiercely. About the choice her mother had made all those years ago to follow her heart instead of her father's expectations. And about the choice Emma was making now to accept an inheritance not just of money and land, but of love and loss and the endless possibility of doing better than the ones who came before. The music box sat on the bedside table, its melody finally wound down, waiting to play again. Emma picked it up and held it close. "I'm going to be okay, Mom," she whispered. "I'm going to give your granddaughter the life you wanted for me. I'm going to break the cycle, I promise." The sun rose over Harvest Creek, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. And in that small hospice room, surrounded by the remnants of a family's tragedy and the seeds of its redemption, Emma Collins began to imagine a different kind of future. One where she was not alone. One where her child would know where they came from. One where love, however imperfect, however late, was finally enough. The funeral was held 3 days later at the Methodist Church on Main Street. Emma stood in the front pew wearing a black dress she had bought at the thrift store in town, her hands folded over her swollen belly, watching strangers file past her grandfather's casket. She did not know any of them. They were faces without names, lives that had intersected with Walter Bennett's in ways she could not imagine, but they knew her. "You must be Sarah's daughter," an elderly woman said, gripping Emma's hands with surprising strength. "I'd know those eyes anywhere. Your mother had the same eyes. Beautiful girl. Broke all our hearts when she left." "Thank you," Emma managed. "Did you know her well?" "Knew her since she was born. I'm Dorothy Henderson. I was friends with your grandmother Eleanor before she passed. Used to babysit your mother when Walter needed help with the farm." Dorothy's eyes filled with tears. "She was such a bright child. So much talent. We all thought she'd do great things." "She did do great things. She raised me." Dorothy squeezed her hands tighter. Yes, she did. And look at you now, carrying the next generation. Eleanor would have been so proud." More people came. More stories. More fragments of a history Emma had never known existed. A man named Robert Dalton told her about the time Walter had saved his family's farm during a drought, giving them an interest-free loan and refusing repayment. A woman named Susan Park described how Walter had anonymously paid for her son's surgery when their insurance fell through. The pastor spoke about Walter's decades of quiet charity, the food bank he had founded, the scholarships he had established for local students. Emma listened to all of it with a growing sense of disorientation. The man they were describing did not match the man who had let his daughter die. The generous neighbor, the pillar of the community, the quiet philanthropist. How could that be the same person who had told Sarah to wait after the service Patricia Holloway approached her? "How are you holding up?" "I don't know." Emma looked around at the crowd of mourners. "These people are describing someone I don't recognize. A good man, a kind man. But that's not who he was to my mother. That's not who he was to me." "People are complicated, Emma. Walter spent the last 16 years trying to atone for what he did. He couldn't bring himself to face you directly, but he poured his guilt into helping others. Every act of charity, every anonymous donation was his way of trying to balance the scales." "The scales don't balance. My mother is still dead. I still grew up alone." "I know, and Walter knew that too. It's part of what destroyed him." Patricia touched her arm gently. "Are you ready to see the farm? I can drive you out there this afternoon if you'd like." Emma had been putting it off. The farm felt like the final step, the moment when all of this would become irrevocably real. But she could not avoid it forever. "Yes," she said. "Let's go." The drive took 20 minutes winding through countryside that grew increasingly rural with every mile. They passed fields of wheat and corn pastures dotted with cattle, old farmhouses with wraparound porches and American flags. Then Patricia turned onto a gravel road and Emma saw it. The farmhouse stood at the end of a long driveway surrounded by mature oak trees that must have been planted 100 years ago. It was 2 stories painted white with green shutters with a wraparound porch that looked out over fields stretching to the mountains. Emma's breath caught in her throat. "This is where my mother grew up. This is where your family has lived for 5 generations. The original homestead was built in 1892. Your great-great-grandfather cleared this land himself." Patricia parked the car, but Emma did not move to get out. She sat staring at the house, trying to imagine her mother as a little girl running across that porch, playing in those fields growing up, surrounded by this beauty. "Take your time," Patricia said. "I'll wait here." Emma finally opened the door and stepped out. The air smelled different here, clean and green with hints of hay and wildflowers. Birds were singing somewhere nearby. A gentle breeze rustled through the oak leaves. She walked slowly toward the porch, her hand trailing along the wooden railing as she climbed the steps. The boards creaked under her feet, and she wondered how many generations of her family had heard that same sound. The front door was unlocked. Emma pushed it open and stepped inside. The house smelled like old wood and dust and something faintly floral that might have been dried lavender. Furniture covered in white sheets filled the living room like ghosts. Photographs lined the walls, faces she did not recognize, watching her with frozen eyes. Emma moved through the rooms in a daze. The kitchen still had the same cast-iron stove that must have been there for decades. The dining room table was large enough to seat 12, scarred with the marks of countless family meals. A grandfather clock stood silent in the hallway, its pendulum still. And then she found the parlor. A grand piano dominated the room, its surface covered in a thin layer of dust. Emma approached it slowly, her fingers hovering over the keys. This was her mother's piano. The instrument Sarah had learned on, had practiced on for hours every day, had played the night she told her father she was pregnant. Emma pressed a single key. The note rang out clear and true, echoing through the empty house. She sat down on the bench and placed both hands on the keys. She had taken lessons as a child, one of the many things Walter's anonymous support had paid for. She had not played in years, but the muscle memory was still there. She began to play Clair de Lune. The melody filled the house, flowing through rooms that had been silent for too long. Emma played with her eyes closed, letting the music carry her somewhere beyond grief and anger and confusion. When she finished, she realized she was crying. That was beautiful. Emma spun around. A man was standing in the doorway, tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair and kind eyes. He looked to be about her age, maybe a few years older. "I'm sorry, Hump," he said quickly. "I didn't mean to startle you. The door was open and I heard the music. I'm David Chen. I've been leasing the farmland from Walter for the past 3 years." Emma wiped her eyes. "Patricia mentioned you. She told me you might be coming by today. I wanted to introduce myself and offer my condolences." David stepped into the room, but kept a respectful distance. "Walter was a good man. He gave me a chance when no one else would." "Everyone keeps telling me what a good man he was." David heard the edge in her voice. "But you don't agree." "I didn't know him, not really. I only met him 3 days ago, and he died that same night." "Then I'm sorry for that too. Sorry you didn't get more time." Emma stood up from the piano bench. "Did he ever talk about me about his daughter?" David hesitated. "He talked about his daughter sometimes. Not often, but when he did, you could see it still hurt him. He kept her room exactly as she left it. Wouldn't let anyone touch it. Said he was keeping it ready in case she ever came back." "She's been dead for 16 years. "I know, but I don't think he ever stopped hoping." David moved to the window and looked out over the fields. Walter was a complicated man. He did a lot of good for this community, but he carried something heavy inside him, something that never let him rest. Emma thought about her grandfather's confession, the guilt he had carried, the letters he had never sent. "He told me about it," she said quietly. "Before he died. He told me everything." David turned back to her. And I don't know what to feel. Part of me hates him for what he did. Part of me understands how a person can let pride destroy everything that matters. And part of me wishes I'd known him longer, wishes we'd had more time to figure out if we could be a real family. Maybe that's okay. Maybe you don't have to know what to feel right now." Emma looked at the stranger, who seemed to understand more than he should. "Did you know about me, I mean, that Walter had a granddaughter somewhere?" "Not specifically, but I knew there was someone. He'd get these reports in the mail, and afterward he'd be quiet for days. Once when he'd had a bit too much whiskey, he told me he'd made a terrible mistake years ago, and he'd spent his whole life trying to figure out how to fix it." David paused. "I guess you were that mistake. Or at least what he did to you was." "He watched me my whole life. Sent money, had investigators following me. But he never once reached out. Fear does strange things to people. I should know." "What do you mean?" David's jaw tightened. "My father was an alcoholic. Violent. When I was 16, I ran away from home and never looked back. For years, I told myself I hated him, that I never wanted to see him again. Then he got sick cancer like Walter, and my mother called to tell me he didn't have long." "Did you go back?" "I didn't. I was too angry, too proud, too scared of what it would feel like to face him. He died 3 weeks later, and I never got to say goodbye." David's voice was rough with old pain. "I regret it every day. Whatever answers I might have gotten, whatever closure, I threw it away because I couldn't swallow my pride long enough to walk through that door." Emma thought about her own journey here, how close she had come to ignoring Patricia's call, how easily she could have let anger and suspicion keep her away. "I almost didn't come," she admitted. "When the attorney called, my first instinct was to hang up and pretend it never happened." "But you didn't." "No, I didn't." David smiled slightly. "Then you're already braver than I was." They stood in silence for a moment, two people shaped by complicated family histories finding unexpected common ground. "I should let you explore," David finally said. "But if you need anything at all, I'm just down the road. Walter was good to me, and I'd like to return the favor however I can." "Thank you." He paused at the doorway. "For what it's worth, I think you being here would have made him happy. Happier than he'd been in years. He spent so long watching from a distance. Finally having you close, even for one night, must have felt like a gift. After David left, Emma continued her exploration of the house. She found her grandmother Eleanor's sewing room still filled with fabric and patterns and a half-finished quilt. She found Walter's office cluttered with decades of farm records and ledgers. She found the guest bedrooms, each one frozen in time like a museum exhibit. And then she found her mother's room. It was at the end of the upstairs hallway, behind a door that had been painted with flowers and butterflies by a much younger hand. Emma stood outside it for a long moment, her heart pounding. This was where Sarah had grown up, where she had dreamed and studied and practiced her music, where she had planned a future that would never come to pass. Emma opened the door. The room was a shrine. Posters from the late 1980s covered the walls. Trophies from music competitions lined the shelves. A bulletin board displayed photos of teenage friends and ticket stubs from concerts and a dried corsage that must have been from a school dance. And on the bed, arranged carefully on the pillow, was a stuffed rabbit with one ear partially torn. Emma picked it up and held it close, breathing in a scent that had faded decades ago, but somehow still lingered. This had been her mother's childhood companion. She knew it instinctively. At the foot of the bed was a wooden chest. Emma knelt beside it and lifted the lid. Inside were the letters Walter had mentioned. Hundreds of them bundled by year tied with faded ribbon. Letters to Sarah spanning the 8 years between her departure and her death. Letters to Emma spanning the 16 years since. Emma picked up the first bundle dated the year her mother had left home and began to read. The handwriting was shaky, the words raw with emotion. "My dearest Sarah, it's been 3 weeks since you left, and I've picked up this pen 100 times trying to find the words to ask you to come home. But every time I start writing, I hear your voice telling me I don't understand love, and my pride won't let me admit you might be right." Another letter 6 months later. "The house is so quiet without you. I catch myself setting 2 places for dinner, then remembering you're not here to share the meal. The piano sits silent in the parlor. No one plays it anymore. No one has the heart." Another a year after that. "The investigator sent me photos of you and Marcus and the baby. Emma, he said you named her. After your grandmother and after something else I don't understand. She's beautiful, Sarah. She looks just like you did at that age. I wish I could hold her. I wish I could tell her I'm her grandfather, but I'm still too proud, still too stupid, still waiting for you to make the first move." Emma read for hours, watching her grandfather's grief unfold across years of unsent letters. His regret deepened with each passing month. His longing for reconciliation grew more desperate, but he never found the courage to actually reach out. Then she found the letters addressed to her. "Dear Emma, you started kindergarten today. The investigator sent me a photo of you in your new school clothes holding a lunchbox with cartoon characters on it. You were smiling so big. I've never wanted anything more in my life than to be there with you to walk you to the bus stop to tell you how proud I am. Dear Emma, you're 10 years old and you just moved to your 4th foster home. I know about the one before this about the family that wasn't kind to you. I've made arrangements to have them reported to social services. It's the least I can do, though it's nowhere near enough. Dear Emma, you graduated high school today. Top of your class, the investigator says. A scholarship to community college. You did all of that on your own, with no family to support you, and I'm so proud I can barely breathe. But I'm also ashamed. Ashamed that you had to do it alone. Ashamed that I could have been there and chose not to be. The letters continued through her college years, her first job, her move to Denver. Walter had known about everything, every struggle, every triumph, every lonely night in apartments she could barely afford. He had been there all along, watching, caring, but never reaching out. Emma set down the last letter and pressed her hands against her face. She did not know how to process any of this. The grandfather who had failed her mother so catastrophically had also spent 16 years documenting his love for the granddaughter he was too afraid to claim. The same pride that had destroyed his relationship with Sarah had kept him from building one with Emma. But underneath all that pride, there had been love. Desperate, imperfect, paralyzed love. Was that enough? Could love count if it was never expressed? Did intentions matter? Matter when actions fell so terribly short, Emma did not have answers. But she knew she needed to keep reading. She found a letter written just 2 months ago, shortly after Walter's diagnosis. Dear Emma, the doctors say I have 3 to 6 months left. Pancreatic cancer, stage 4. There's no treatment, no hope, no future beyond the one I've already wasted. I've made my decision. I'm going to find you. I'm going to tell you everything. I'm going to face whatever judgment you pass on me because you deserve the truth more than I deserve my comfortable denial. I'm scared, Emma. More scared than I've ever been in my life. Not of dying, but of seeing the hatred in your eyes when you learn what I did. of watching you walk away the way your mother did and knowing this time I'll never have a chance to make it right. But I'm going to do it anyway, because I've spent 16 years being a coward and I refuse to die as one. If you're reading this, it means I finally found my courage. It means you came. It means you're standing in your mother's childhood home surrounded by the history I should have shared with you years ago. I hope you can find it in your heart to forgive me, but even if you can't, I hope you'll stay. This farm is yours, Emma. This house is yours. This land has been in our family for 5 generations and you're the 6th. You belong here whether you know it yet or not. Build a life here. Raise your child here. Break the cycle of pride and stubbornness that destroyed our family. Be better than I was. That's all I ask. That's the only redemption I need. All my love forever and always. Your grandfather, Walter. Emma folded the letter carefully and held it against her chest. She looked around her mother's room at the shrine Walter had maintained for decades at the life that had been frozen in time while everything else moved forward. And she made a decision. She was not going back to Denver. She was not going back to the diner and the laundromat apartment and the life that had been slowly suffocating her. She was going to stay. For her mother. For her grandfather. For the baby growing inside her who deserved roots and history and a place to belong. For herself. Emma walked back downstairs to the parlor where Patricia was waiting. "Well," the attorney asked, "what do you think?" "I think I'm home," Emma said. "I think I've been homeless my entire life, and I finally found where I belong." Patricia smiled. "Walter hoped you'd feel that way. He prepared everything you know. The house is fully paid off. There's money in the bank to cover repairs and upkeep. David Chen's lease payments will provide steady income. All you have to do is sign the papers." "Then let's sign them?" They went to the dining room table where Patricia spread out the documents. Emma read through each one, carefully asking questions, making sure she understood what she was agreeing to. When she finally signed her name on the last page, something shifted inside her. She was no longer Emma Collins' orphan, no longer Emma Collins' foster kid, no longer Emma Collins' waitress at a truck stop diner with nothing to her name. She was Emma Collins' Bennett heir to 5 generations of family history, owner of 320 acres and a house that had stood for more than a century. She was home. Over the following weeks, Emma threw herself into making the farmhouse livable again. She removed the white sheets from the furniture, revealing pieces that had been crafted by hand generations ago. She cleaned windows that had not been touched in years, letting light flood rooms that had been dark for too long. She scrubbed floors and aired out closets and began the slow process of turning a museum into a home. David Chen stopped by, often bringing supplies and offering advice. He showed her how to check the well pump and maintain the furnace. He explained the basics of the farming operation and introduced her to his workers, kind men and then women who had known Walter for years. "He talked about you more than you realize," David told her one afternoon. They were sitting on the porch drinking lemonade and watching the sunset paint the mountains gold. Not by name, but we all knew there was someone he was waiting for. "I just wish he hadn't waited so long." "Me too. But at least he found his courage at the end. That's more than a lot of people manage." The townspeople of Harvest Creek embraced Emma with a warmth she had never experienced before. Dorothy Henderson brought casseroles and baby clothes, appointing herself unofficial grandmother to Emma's unborn child. Robert Dalton organized a group of volunteers to repair the barn roof before winter. Susan Park's book club invited Emma to join, insisting she needed social connections as much as she needed a new home. For the first time in her life, Emma had a community, people who knew her name, who asked about her day, who seemed genuinely interested in her well-being. It was disorienting. Beautiful, but disorienting. She still had not fully processed her feelings about Walter. The anger came in waves sometimes when she least expected it. She would be washing dishes or folding laundry and suddenly remember that phone call, her mother begging to come home, and the rage would crash over her like a physical force. But so would the other feelings, the gratitude for the inheritance, the comfort of finally knowing where she came from, the strange, complicated love she was beginning to feel for a grandfather she had known for only one night. Dorothy found her crying one afternoon, sitting in the parlor with Walter's letters spread around her. "Oh, honey," the older woman sat down beside her and pulled her into a hug. "What's wrong?" "Everything, nothing, I don't know." Emma wiped her eyes. "I just found a letter he wrote when I was 12. He knew I was in a bad foster home. He arranged for the family to be investigated. They lost their license because of him. That sounds like a good thing." It was a good thing. But why couldn't he just come get me? Why could he arrange an investigation but not walk through the door of social services and say he wanted to take me home? Dorothy was quiet for a moment. "Did I ever tell you about my brother Richard?" Emma shook her head. Richard and I were close as children, inseparable, but when we were teenagers we had a falling out. A stupid argument about a boy we both liked. We said terrible things to each other, things that couldn't be unsaid. What happened? We stopped speaking. For 30 years we lived in the same town and never said a word to each other. I'd see him at the grocery store and pretend I hadn't. He'd pass my house and keep his eyes straight ahead. That's awful. It was, and the worst part was I wanted to reconcile. I wanted it desperately, but I kept waiting for him to apologize first, and he kept waiting for me. Dorothy's voice grew heavy with old regret. He died 4 years ago. Heart attack. By the time I got to the hospital, he was already gone. I never got to tell him I was sorry. Never got to hear him say the same. Emma thought about Walter dying in that hospice bed, finally unburdening himself after 16 years of silence. At least your grandfather found his voice at the end, Dorothy continued. At least you got to hear his story to understand what happened and why. Richard and I never got that chance. The silence just went on forever. Do you regret it? Every single day. Every single day I think about what I would have said if I'd been brave enough. How different both our lives might have been. Dorothy squeezed Emma's hand. Don't let anger steal your peace, honey. I know what Walter did was terrible. I know you have every right to hate him, but holding on to that hate won't change the past. It'll just poison your future. My mother said something similar in her letter. Smart woman. You come from smart women. Emma looked down at the letters spread across the floor. Years of regret and longing captured in ink on paper. I don't know how to forgive him, she admitted. I keep trying and I keep failing. Then maybe forgiveness isn't what you need right now. Maybe acceptance is enough. Accepting that he made terrible choices. Accepting that he tried to atone. Accepting that life is messy and complicated and people fail each other even when they love each other. Dorothy's eyes were wise and kind. You don't have to forgive Walter to honor his memory. You just have to live the life he wanted for you. Build something good from the rubble he left behind. Build something good from the rubble. Emma thought about those words for a long time after Dorothy left. 3 weeks later, she went into labor. It started in the middle of the night, a cramping sensation that pulled her from sleep. Emma lay in bed for an hour, timing the contractions, telling herself it was probably false labor. But by 4 a.m., she knew this was real. She called Dorothy, who arrived within minutes, and drove her to the hospital in the next town over. The contractions were coming faster now, harder, and Emma gripped the door handle as wave after wave of pain rolled through her. You're doing great, Dorothy said, her voice calm and steady. Just breathe. We're almost there. The hospital was small but well equipped. They got Emma into a room and hooked up to monitors, and then the real work began. 12 hours of labor, 12 hours of pain and exhaustion, and moments when Emma thought she couldn't do it anymore. But she could. She did. At 4:17 p.m., Sarah Rose Collins Bennett entered the world screaming and red-faced and absolutely perfect. Emma held her daughter for the first time and felt something shift in her chest. A love so fierce and immediate it took her breath away. A connection that transcended everything she had experienced before. Hello, Sarah, she whispered. I'm your mother, and I promise I will never, ever abandon you. The baby's eyes opened unfocused but searching, and Emma could swear she saw recognition there. As if this tiny person already knew her, already trusted her, already loved her. She's beautiful, Dorothy said, tears streaming down her weathered face. Oh, Emma, she's absolutely beautiful. Emma looked up at the woman who had become like family over the past few weeks. Thank you for being here, for everything. Wouldn't have missed it for the world. That little girl is going to grow up surrounded by people who love her. She's going to know exactly where she belongs. Where she belongs. Emma thought about those words as she held her daughter. About the farm waiting for them. About the community that had embraced them. About the complicated legacy they had inherited. Sarah Rose would never know her great-grandfather. Never hear his voice or feel his embrace. But she would know his story. She would understand the choices he made, both the terrible ones and the attempts at redemption. She would learn from his mistakes. And maybe in learning, she would find a way to break the cycle that had haunted this family for so long. The first night home from the hospital, Emma sat in the rocking chair in her mother's old room. Sarah Rose was sleeping in her arms, wrapped in a blanket that Dorothy had crocheted specially for her. The music box sat on the bedside table, its melody wound down, ready to play when needed. Emma looked around the room at her mother's childhood memories, at the photos on the wall and the trophies on the shelf, at the life that had been frozen in time for so many years. I'm going to tell her about you, Mom, Emma said quietly. about who you were and how much you loved me, about the choices you made and why you made them. I'm going to make sure she knows she comes from strength and courage, even when that strength was imperfect. She thought about Walter's letter. Build a life here. Raise your child here. Break the cycle. And I'm going to tell her about Grandpa, too. The whole story, not just the good parts. She needs to understand how pride can destroy everything, how fear can paralyze even the people who love us most, how waiting too long to say the important things can cost us everything. Sarah stirred in her arms, making a small sound that might have been agreement. You're going to grow up different than I did, Emma promised. You're going to have roots and history and a place where you belong. You're going to know your family, all of them, even the ones who are gone. And you're going to understand that love isn't just a feeling, it's a choice you make every single day, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. She wound the music box and let Claire de Lune fill the room. The melody drifted through the old farmhouse, touching rooms that had been silent for too long. Emma imagined her mother hearing this same tune as a child, imagined her grandmother humming along, imagined generations of women finding comfort in these simple notes. And now Sarah Rose was hearing it too. The 7th generation to call this place home. Emma closed her eyes and let the music wash over her. She had spent her whole life believing she was alone, believing she was unwanted, believing there was something fundamentally broken inside her that made her unworthy of love. She had been wrong. She came from love. Complicated, imperfect, devastating love. Love that had made terrible choices and caused tremendous pain. But love, nonetheless. And now she had a chance to do better. To love her daughter openly without pride or fear or hesitation. To build the family she had never had, not by forgetting the past, but by learning from it. The music box wound down. Sarah Rose slept on. And Emma sat in her mother's childhood room, surrounded by ghosts and memories and the first fragile threads of hope, finally understanding what it meant to come home. 6 months had passed since Sarah Rose was born, and Emma had finally begun to feel like she belonged in Harvest Creek. The farmhouse no longer felt like a stranger's home. She had repainted the kitchen in soft yellow, replaced the worn curtains with ones she had chosen herself, and filled the empty spaces with photographs of Sarah Rose at every stage of her short life. The refrigerator was covered with drawings Dorothy's grandchildren had made for the baby. The parlor echoed with music again, Emma practicing piano in the evenings, while Sarah cooed in her bouncer nearby. David Chen had become a steady presence in her life, stopping by several times a week to check on the farm operations and increasingly to check on Emma herself. They had developed an easy friendship built on shared loss and mutual understanding. He never pushed for more than she was ready to give, and she appreciated him for it. The town had embraced her completely. She was no longer Walter Bennett's mysterious granddaughter, but simply Emma, the young mother with the beautiful baby and the talent for apple pie that she had learned from Dorothy. She had joined the church choir, volunteered at the food bank her grandfather had founded, and even started giving piano lessons to children whose parents remembered her mother's talent. For the first time in her memory, Emma was happy. Then the letter arrived. It came on a Tuesday morning in late spring, mixed in with bills and advertisements, and a card from the local women's club inviting her to their annual luncheon. Emma almost missed it, almost tossed it in the recycling without a second glance, but the return address caught her eye. Daniel Morrison, Denver, Colorado. Emma's blood turned to ice. She stood in the kitchen holding the envelope like it might explode her heart, pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. Sarah Rose was napping in the next room, blissfully unaware that her father had finally decided to acknowledge her existence. Emma tore open the envelope with shaking hands. Emma, I know I have no right to contact you after what I did, but I've been doing a lot of thinking lately, and I need to talk to you. I heard through some people that you came into some money and moved to a farm somewhere. I'm glad things worked out for you. I always knew you were a survivor. The thing is, I've changed. I got sober 6 months ago, started going to meetings, working the steps. Part of my recovery is making amends to people I've hurt, and you're at the top of that list. I want to meet my daughter. I know I don't deserve it, but I'm asking anyway. I'm her father, Emma. That has to count for something. I'll be in Harvest Creek next Saturday. We can meet somewhere public if that makes you feel safer. I just want to see her face. Just once. Please. Daniel. Emma read the letter 3 times, her hands trembling more with each pass. He wanted to meet Sarah Rose, the man who had told her to get rid of their baby, who had called her a liar and a whore, who had disappeared without a backward glance. Now he wanted to play father. Her first instinct was to burn the letter and pretend it never existed, but something stopped her. She thought about Walter, about all those years of watching from a distance, too afraid to reach out. She thought about her mother dying alone because pride had kept father and daughter apart. She thought about the cycle she had promised to break. Was she about to make the same mistake Emma called Dorothy? "That no-good coward," Dorothy said when Emma explained the situation. "After everything he did, he thinks he can just waltz back in and play daddy. You should tell him to go straight to hell." "I know, that's what I want to do, but Dorothy, what if he's really changed? What if keeping him away from Sarah means she grows up wondering why her father didn't want her the same way I grew up wondering about my family?" There's a difference between a grandfather who was too proud to reach out and a father who abandoned his pregnant girlfriend because he was too immature to handle responsibility. Is there both of them left? Both of them made excuses. Both of them caused pain because they were too scared to do the right thing. Dorothy was quiet for a long moment. "What does your gut tell you?" Emma looked at the letter in her hand. "My gut tells me he's lying, that he heard about the inheritance and saw dollar signs, that this is about money, not Sarah. Then trust your gut. But what if I'm wrong? What if I'm letting my anger cloud my judgment the same way Walter let his pride cloud his? Honey, you're not Walter. You're not your mother. You're allowed to protect yourself and your daughter from someone who hurt you." "I know, I just keep thinking about what my mother wrote in her letter. Don't let anger poison you. Choose love. Choose forgiveness." Dorothy sighed. Sarah was talking about family, about people who loved imperfectly but genuinely. Daniel Morrison isn't family. He's a man who showed you exactly who he was when things got hard. People like that don't change in 6 months. Emma wanted to believe her, wanted to tear up the letter and move on with her life. But the doubt lingered. She did not respond to Daniel's letter. Saturday came and went without her making any decision about whether to meet him. But Daniel came anyway. Emma was in the front yard with Sarah Rose enjoying the warm spring afternoon when a truck she did not recognize pulled up the driveway. Her stomach dropped as she watched it approach, knowing somehow exactly who was behind the wheel. Daniel Morrison stepped out, looking different than she remembered. Thinner, older. There were dark circles under his eyes and a tension in his jaw that had not been there before. "Emma!" He stopped about 10 feet away, keeping his distance. "I know you didn't answer my letter, but I couldn't just leave without trying." Emma instinctively pulled Sarah closer to her chest. "You shouldn't be here." "I know, but please, just hear me out. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking." "You asked for 5 minutes when you told me you were done. Look how that turned out." Daniel flinched. "I deserved that. I deserve a lot worse. What I did to you was unforgivable, and I'm not here to ask you to forgive me. I'm just here to see my daughter." "She's not your daughter. You made that very clear when you walked away." "I was wrong. I was scared and stupid and wrong. But Emma, I've changed. I've been sober for 7 months now. I go to meetings every day. I have a sponsor, a job, an apartment. I'm trying to be a better person." Emma studied his face, looking for the lie, looking for the angle. "Why now, Daniel? It's been over a year. Why suddenly care about a child you told me to get rid of?" "Because getting sober means facing the things you've done. And what I did to you, what I said, it haunts me every single day. I can't move forward without at least trying to make it right." "Making it right isn't about you feeling better. It's about what's best for Sarah." "I know that, and I think having a father in her life is what's best for her. I'm not asking for custody or anything like that. I just want to be part of her life. Birthdays, holidays, maybe a weekend here and there when she's older. I want her to know she has a dad who cares about her." Emma laughed bitterly. "A dad who cares? You called me a whore, Daniel. You accused me of sleeping around. You told me to get an abortion and walked out the door like I was nothing." "I know what I did." Do you really understand what it was like for me after you left? I was pregnant, alone, working double shifts at a truck stop diner just to afford my rent. I had no one, Daniel. No family, no friends, no support. And you were off living your life like I didn't exist." Daniel's face crumpled. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I know those words aren't enough, but I don't know what else to say. I was a monster, Emma. I treated you like garbage because I was too scared to man up and do the right thing." Sarah Rose chose that moment to start crying. Emma bounced her, gently shushing her, acutely aware of Daniel's eyes fixed on the baby. "She's beautiful," he said softly. "She looks like you." "She looks like my mother, actually. Her name is Sarah Rose, after my mother and grandmother." "Your mother? I didn't know you had family." "I didn't know either, not until after you left. Turns out my grandfather had been watching me my whole life, too afraid to reach out. He died the night I met him. But he left me this farm, this house. He gave me a home when I had nothing." Daniel looked around at the property with new interest. Emma saw his eyes calculating, assessing, and felt her suspicions harden. That's quite an inheritance. You really landed on your feet. I didn't land anywhere. I clawed my way up from the hole you left me in. Emma, I'm not here for money, if that's what you're thinking. I just want to know my daughter. And I should believe that. Why? Because you wrote a nice letter, because you showed up uninvited at my home. Because I'm telling the truth. I've made a lot of mistakes in my life, but I'm trying to do better. Isn't that what you'd want Sarah to learn? That people can change, that second chances exist. The question hit Emma harder than she expected. She thought about Walter dying in that hospice bed, begging for the chance to tell his story. She thought about her mother's letter urging her to choose forgiveness over anger. But she also thought about Sarah Rose, innocent and trusting, depending on Emma to protect her from people who might hurt her. I need time to think, Emma finally said. You can't just show up here and expect me to hand over my daughter. I'm not asking you to hand her over. I'm asking for a chance. One meeting, supervised, anywhere you want. Just let me hold her once, let me see her face up close, and if after that you still don't want me in her life, I'll respect your decision. Emma studied him for a long moment. Come back tomorrow. Meet me at the diner on Main Street at noon. We'll talk, but you are not holding her until I decide you're not a threat. Daniel nodded quickly. Thank you, Emma. You won't regret this. He got back in his truck and drove away, leaving Emma standing in the yard with her crying baby and a knot of dread in her stomach. That night she could not sleep. She paced the farmhouse with Sarah Rose in her arms, replaying the conversation over and over. Had she made the right choice? Should she have sent him away permanently? Was she being foolish to give him even a chance? Around midnight, she called David. Sorry to wake you, she said when he answered groggily, but I need to talk to someone. What's wrong? Is Sarah okay? Sarah's fine. It's Daniel, Sarah's biological father. He showed up today. He wants to be in her life. She heard David sit up in bed, suddenly alert. The guy who abandoned you, what did he say? Emma told him everything. The letter, the conversation, the meeting she had agreed to for tomorrow. I don't like it, David said when she finished. This guy shows up out of nowhere right after you inherit a farm worth over $1 million. That's not a coincidence. I know, but what if I'm wrong? What if he really has changed? People don't change that fast, Emma. Not the kind of change he'd need to make. He went from telling you to abort your baby to wanting to be Father of the Year in less than 2 years. That doesn't happen. My grandfather changed at the end. My mother believed people could change. Your grandfather spent 16 years trying to change, and even then he almost didn't make it. This Daniel guy has been sober for 7 months? That's nothing. That's barely a start. Emma knew he was right, but the doubt would not leave her alone. What do I do? David, how do I know what's right? You protect your daughter. That's all that matters. If this guy is genuine, he'll prove it over time. He'll be patient. He'll accept whatever boundaries you set. But if he pushes, if he demands, if he tries to manipulate you, that tells you everything you need to know. And the meeting tomorrow? Go to the meeting. Keep it public. Don't let him anywhere near Sarah. And watch him, Emma. Watch how he reacts when you set limits. That'll tell you who he really is. The diner was crowded when Emma arrived the next day. She had left Sarah Rose with Dorothy, not wanting Daniel anywhere near her daughter until she was certain of his intentions. The decision had felt right, but as she slid into a booth near the back, she wondered if she was being paranoid. Daniel arrived 5 minutes late, looking nervous. He slid into the seat across from her, his eyes immediately searching the diner. Where's Sarah? Safe, with someone I trust. His face fell. I thought I'd get to see her. I told you you're not seeing her until I decide you're not a threat. I'm not a threat, Emma. I'm her father. Being a father is more than biology, Daniel. It's showing up. It's being there. It's not walking out when things get hard. I know, and I'm trying to show you I can be that person now. Emma studied his face. Tell me about your recovery. How did it start? Daniel shifted uncomfortably. I hit rock bottom about 8 months ago. Lost my job, lost my apartment, ended up sleeping in my truck. One night I got so drunk I almost drove off a bridge. That's when I knew I had to change. And the meetings? Every day, sometimes twice a day at first. I have a sponsor named Bill who's been sober for 20 years. He's helped me see how much damage I've done to people. Is that why you're here? Because your sponsor told you to make amends? Daniel hesitated. Partly, but it's more than that. I think about Sarah all the time. I wonder what she looks like, what her voice sounds like, whether she's healthy and happy. I wonder if she'll hate me when she's old enough to understand what I did. And what exactly did you do, Daniel? I want to hear you say it. He met her eyes. I abandoned you. I abandoned my own child. I was cruel and cowardly, and I left you with nothing because I was too scared to face what I'd done. You called me a whore. I know. You accused me of cheating on you. I know. You told me to get an abortion like Sarah was a problem to be solved. I know, his voice cracked. I know what I did, Emma. I remember every word I said. It makes me sick to think about it. Good. It should make you sick. They sat in tense silence for a moment. The waitress came and took their orders, coffee for both, and then left them alone again. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Daniel finally said. I'm asking for a chance. One chance to prove I can be different. And if I say no, if I tell you to leave and never come back, then I'll leave. I won't fight you. I won't take you to court. I'll just go and try to live with the consequences of my choices. Emma wanted to believe him. Part of her desperately wanted to believe that people could change, that second chances were possible, that the father of her child might someday be worthy of that title. But another part of her remembered the look on his face when she told him she was pregnant. The contempt. The dismissal. The ease with which he had walked away. I need to ask you something, she said slowly, and I need you to tell me the truth. Anything. Did you know about my inheritance before you decided to reach out? Daniel's expression flickered. Just for a moment, just long enough for Emma to see it. I heard some things. People talk, but that's not why I'm here. What exactly did you hear? That you'd moved to some farm in Colorado, that you'd come into money, but Emma, I swear that's not what this is about. Really? Because the timing seems awfully convenient, Daniel. I'm struggling and alone. You want nothing to do with me. I inherit a fortune. Suddenly, you want to play daddy. It's not like that. Then tell me what it is like. Explain to me why I should believe anything you say. Daniel ran his hands through his hair, frustration evident in every line of his body. Because I'm telling the truth. Because I've spent every day for the past 7 months trying to become a better person. Because I look at myself in the mirror and I hate what I see, and the only way I know how to fix it is to face the people I've hurt and try to make amends. Amends aren't about you feeling better, Daniel. They're about repairing the damage you've done. I know that. Bill says the same thing. That's why I'm here, Emma. Not to ease my conscience, but to give Sarah something I took away from her. A father. Emma thought about her own childhood. About growing up without a family, without any sense of where she came from. About the hole that had always existed inside her, the one she had not even known was there until Walter's confession filled it with complicated truth. Would Sarah feel that same hole someday? Would she grow up wondering why her father had not wanted her? Or would Emma be protecting her from someone who would only cause more pain? I need more time, Emma said finally. This is too big a decision to make over coffee. How much time? As much as I need. If you really want to prove you've changed, you'll wait. You'll be patient. You'll respect my boundaries and give me space to figure this out. Daniel's jaw tightened, but he nodded. Okay, I'll wait. But Emma, please don't make me wait forever. Every day I'm not in her life is a day I can't get back. Every day you weren't in her life for the first year was a day you chose to throw away. You don't get to complain about lost time now. She stood up, leaving money on the table for her untouched coffee. I'll contact you when I'm ready. Don't come to the farm again. Don't try to find Sarah. If I see you anywhere near my daughter before I've made my decision, I'll get a restraining order. Do you understand? I understand. Emma walked out of the diner without looking back. But as she drove home, she could not shake the feeling that something was very wrong. Daniel's expression when she asked about the inheritance kept replaying in her mind. That flicker of guilt quickly suppressed. The way his eyes had shifted away from hers, he was lying about something. She was sure of it. She just did not know what. The answer came 3 days later. Patricia Holloway called her on a Friday morning, her voice tight with concern. Emma, we have a problem. Someone's been asking questions about your grandfather's estate. What kind of questions? Legal questions. About the validity of the will, about whether there are any other potential heirs, about the circumstances of your inheritance. Emma's heart began to race. Who's asking? A lawyer from Denver named Marcus Webb. He represents a client who claims to have a stake in Walter Bennett's estate. That's impossible. Walter had no other family. His wife died decades ago. My mother was his only child, and I'm my mother's only child. I know, but Mr. Prister, Webb is alleging that his client has a claim that supersedes yours. What kind of claim? Patricia paused. He's claiming his client is Sarah Rose's father, and that as such he has rights to any inheritance that would eventually pass to her. The phone nearly slipped from Emma's fingers. Daniel. Daniel had hired a lawyer. Daniel was trying to take her inheritance through her daughter. Can he do that? Emma's voice came out as a whisper. Is that even legal? It's complicated. Normally, no. A child's father doesn't have automatic rights to their inheritance. But Mr. Webb is arguing that since Sarah Rose is a minor, any assets held in her name should be managed by both parents. And since you currently have sole custody, he's requesting a custody hearing to establish Daniel Morrison's parental rights. He abandoned us. He walked out before she was even born. How can he have any rights at all? That's exactly what we'll argue. But Emma, you need to understand something. If Daniel can establish himself as Sarah's legal father, he could potentially force you to include him in financial decisions regarding her future inheritance, and if he gets any form of custody, even partial, he could have access to farm operations, to bank accounts, to everything. Emma sank into a chair, her legs no longer able to support her. This was why Daniel had come back. This was why he had written that letter, shown up at her door, talked about change and amends and second chances. It had never been about Sarah. It had always been about money. What do I do? She asked, her voice hollow. We fight. We gather evidence of his abandonment, his cruel words, his absence from Sarah's life. We prove to a judge that he's not interested in being a father, only in accessing your assets. And if we lose, we won't lose. But Emma, this is going to be ugly. Daniel's lawyer will dig into your past, your mental health, your fitness as a mother. They'll try to make you look unstable or unfit. You need to be prepared for that. Emma thought about her past. The foster homes, the years of instability, the fact that she had inherited this farm from a grandfather she had known for less than 24 hours. How would that look to a judge? How would they spin her story to make her seem like someone who should not have sole custody of her child? I'll be prepared, Emma said, her voice hardening. I've fought my whole life, Patricia. I'm not going to stop now. She hung up the phone and sat in silence for a long moment. Then she picked up her daughter from her crib and held her close. I will protect you, she whispered into Sarah's soft hair. No matter what it takes, no matter what I have to do, that man will never take you from me. Sarah Rose cooed and grabbed at Emma's face with tiny fingers, and Emma felt something shift inside her. The doubt she had been carrying since Daniel's first letter evaporated, replaced by a cold, clear certainty. She had given him a chance. She had opened the door to reconciliation, had tried to believe in second chances and changed hearts. And he had used that chance to try to steal her daughter's inheritance. No more doubt. No more second-guessing. No more wondering if she was being too harsh. Daniel Morrison had shown her exactly who he was, and Emma was going to make sure he never got anywhere near her family again. The custody hearing was scheduled for 6 weeks later. Emma spent every moment preparing. She gathered evidence of Daniel's abandonment, including text messages from friends who had heard him bragging about dodging responsibility. She obtained records of his drinking, his job losses, his eviction from 3 apartments. She documented every cruel word he had ever said to her, every lie he had ever told. David Chen testified about Emma's character, about her devotion to Sarah Rose, about the community that had embraced her. Dorothy Henderson spoke about Emma's fitness as a mother, about the stable, loving home she had created. Patricia Holloway built a case so strong that Daniel's lawyer looked physically ill by the time they reached the courtroom. But Daniel had prepared too. He showed up to the hearing in a suit and tie, clean-shaven looking every inch the reformed man. His lawyer presented certificates from his AA meetings, letters from his sponsor, a lease agreement for a stable apartment. They painted a picture of a man who had made mistakes but was committed to change. And then they attacked Emma. Your Honor, Ms. Collins has a history of instability. Marcus Webb said, his voice smooth and confident. She grew up in the foster system, bouncing from home to home. She was homeless at 18. She worked low-wage jobs for years before suddenly inheriting a fortune from a man she'd known for less than a day. Is this really the stable environment we want for a child? Emma's hands clenched in her lap. Furthermore, Webb continued, Ms. Collins has been diagnosed with anxiety and depression in the past. She has no extended family, no support system beyond a few acquaintances she's known for less than a year. My client, by contrast, has a strong support network, a steady job, and a genuine desire to be part of his daughter's life. Your Honor, this is ridiculous, Patricia interjected. Mr. Morrison abandoned Ms. Collins when she was pregnant. He told her to have an abortion. He disappeared for over a year and only resurfaced when he learned about her inheritance. This isn't about fatherhood, it's about money. That's a serious accusation, Pat, the judge said, looking at Patricia over her glasses. Do you have evidence to support it? We have Mr. Morrison's own words, Your Honor. Patricia produced the text messages. The witness statements the timeline that showed Daniel's sudden interest coinciding exactly with Emma's inheritance becoming public knowledge. The judge studied the evidence for a long moment. "Mr. Morrison," she said finally, "can you explain why you waited over a year to seek contact with your daughter?" Daniel stood, his expression carefully humble. "Your Honor, I was struggling with addiction. I knew I wasn't fit to be a father, and I thought the kindest thing I could do was stay away until I got myself together. It wasn't until I got sober that I realized how wrong I'd been. My daughter deserves to know her father, and I deserve a chance to prove I can be the dad she needs. And your sudden interest has nothing to do with Ms. Collins's inheritance?" "Nothing at all, Your Honor. I don't want her money. I just want to know my child." Emma could not stay silent any longer. "That's a lie." The judge turned to her. "Ms. Collins, everything he's saying is a lie. He didn't stay away because he was being kind. He stayed away because he didn't want anything to do with me or our baby. He called me a whore. He accused me of sleeping around. He told me to get rid of her like she was garbage." "Ms. Collins, please control yourself." "I'm sorry, Your Honor, but I can't sit here and listen to him pretend to be something he's not. This man doesn't care about Sarah. He never has. He's here because he wants money, and he's willing to use his own daughter to get it." Daniel's face hardened. "That's not true." "Then prove it. Give up any claim to my inheritance. Sign a document saying you'll never seek financial support from the farm or the estate. If this is really about Sarah, that shouldn't be a problem." The courtroom went silent. Daniel looked at his lawyer. Marcus Webb looked at Daniel. Some unspoken communication passed between them. "Your Honor," Webb said slowly, "my client would need time to consider such a request." "What's there to consider?" Emma pressed. "If he really just wants to be a father, money shouldn't matter. He can visit Sarah, build a relationship with her, be part of her life without any financial involvement whatsoever. Unless, of course, that's not what he wants at all." The judge leaned forward, her eyes sharp. "Mr. Morrison, is money a factor in your decision to seek custody?" Daniel hesitated. It was only a moment, only a fraction of a second, but it was enough. "No, Your Honor, of course not." "Then you'd be willing to sign an agreement waiving any claim to Ms. Collins's estate or any assets that might eventually pass to your daughter?" Another hesitation. Longer this time. "I would need to discuss that with my attorney." The judge nodded slowly. "I think we've heard enough for today. I'm going to take a recess to review the evidence. We'll reconvene tomorrow morning at 9. She banged her gavel and the courtroom erupted into motion. Emma stayed seated, watching Daniel confer urgently with his lawyer. Their body language told her everything she needed to know. The hesitation, the whispered argument, the frustrated gestures. He had come for money. And now that his bluff had been called, he did not know what to do. Patricia sat down beside her. "That was brilliant, Emma. You put him in an impossible position." "Did I?" "He might still agree to the waiver just to save face." "He won't. Men like Daniel don't give up potential millions out of pride. He'll either withdraw his petition or reveal himself completely. Either way, you win." Emma looked at her daughter sleeping peacefully in Dorothy's arms across the courtroom. "I won't feel like I've won until he's gone forever, until I know Sarah is safe." "She's safe. Whatever happens tomorrow, she's safe because she has you." The next morning, Daniel Morrison withdrew his custody petition. His lawyer cited irreconcilable differences in strategy, but everyone in the courtroom knew the truth. When faced with the choice between his daughter and the potential for wealth, Daniel had chosen to walk away entirely rather than give up his financial hopes. He did not even look at Emma as he left the courthouse. She watched him go with a complicated mixture of relief and sadness. Not sadness for herself, but for Sarah Rose. Her daughter would grow up knowing that her father had valued money over her, that given the choice between being a parent and being rich, he had chosen neither. But maybe Emma thought that was its own kind of gift. Sarah would never have to wonder about her father's character. She would never have to discover his true nature through painful experience. Emma could tell her the truth when she was old enough to understand, and Sarah could build her identity on something more solid than a father's empty promises. The drive back to Harvest Creek felt different than any drive Emma had taken before. She was not returning as a woman under siege fighting to protect what was hers. She was returning as a victor, as someone who had faced a threat and overcome it, as a mother who had proven she would do whatever it took to keep her child safe. Sarah Rose slept in her car seat, unaware of the battle that had been fought on her behalf. Emma reached back and touched her daughter's tiny hand. "We're okay now," she whispered. "We're safe, and no one is ever going to threaten our family again." When she pulled up to the farmhouse, David was waiting on the porch. He came down the steps as she got out of the car, his face a mixture of concern and hope. Well, how did it go? He withdrew. It's over. David's face broke into a relieved smile. Thank God, I was going crazy waiting to hear. It was close. For a minute there, I thought he might actually agree to the waiver, just to keep his options open. But in the end, he couldn't commit to being a father if there wasn't money in it for him. Then you're better off without him. Sarah's better off without him. I know. I've always known. I just needed to see it proven in a courtroom. David helped her carry Sarah Rose inside, and for a moment they stood together in the kitchen, the afternoon light streaming through the windows, the baby cooing contentedly between them. You were amazing today, Pam, David said quietly. The way you stood up to him, the way you called his bluff, I've never seen anything like it. I just told the truth, that's all. No, it was more than that. You showed everyone who you really are. A fighter, a protector, someone who would walk through fire for the people she loves. Emma looked at him, really looked at him for the first time in weeks. His kind eyes, his steady presence, the way he had shown up for her again and again without asking for anything in return. David, I need to tell you something. What is it? These past months, everything you've done for me and Sarah, the help with the farm, the late-night phone calls being here today, I couldn't have gotten through any of this without you. You don't have to thank me. I wanted to help. I know. That's what makes it mean so much. Emma took a deep breath. I spent my whole life believing I was alone, believing I had to do everything myself because no one else would ever be there for me. But you've shown me that's not true. You've shown me what it feels like to have someone in my corner. David stepped closer. You're not alone, Emma. You never will be again, not as long as I'm around. Sarah Rose made a sound that might have been approval, and Emma, for the first time since Walter's death, allowed herself to imagine a future that included more than just survival. A future with family, with community, with love. The road ahead was still uncertain. There would be challenges she could not predict, obstacles she would have to overcome, but she would face them the way she had faced everything else. With courage, with determination, with the knowledge that she came from people who loved fiercely even when they loved imperfectly, and with the understanding that she was not fighting alone. 2 years had passed since the custody hearing, and Emma barely recognized the woman she had become. The farmhouse was no longer a museum to the past, but a living, breathing home filled with laughter and chaos and love. Sarah Rose had grown from a helpless infant into a toddler with her grandmother's eyes and her mother's stubborn spirit. She ran through the rooms on unsteady legs, chasing the farm cats, banging on the piano keys, filling every corner with noise and life. David Chen had become more than a friend. Their relationship had grown slowly, carefully built on mutual respect and shared understanding. He had never pushed, never demanded, simply showed up day after day until Emma could no longer imagine her life without him. They had been officially together for 8 months now, and for the first time in her life, Emma understood what it meant to be truly loved. The farm was thriving. David's expertise had transformed the land into a profitable operation, and Emma had discovered an unexpected talent for business management. Together, they had expanded into organic produce selling at farmers markets throughout the region. The Bennett Farm brand was becoming known for quality and integrity values that Emma insisted upon honoring. Dorothy Henderson had become the grandmother Emma never had. She was at the farmhouse almost daily, helping with Sarah Rose, sharing recipes and wisdom, filling the role that should have belonged to Eleanor Bennett. The two women had developed a bond that transcended their initial connection, something deeper and more permanent. Life was good, better than Emma had ever dared to hope, but peace never lasted forever. The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning in late October, mixed in with bills and seed catalogs and a birthday card from the women's club. Emma almost missed it, almost tossed the plain white envelope aside without a second glance. But something made her pause. The return address was a law firm in Chicago, Morrison and Associates. Morrison. Emma's blood ran cold. She tore open the envelope with shaking hands, her heart already racing. Dear Ms. Collins Bennett, this firm represents the estate of Daniel Raymond Morrison, who passed away on October 3rd of this year. Mr. Morrison died intestate, and as such, his assets and obligations will be distributed according to state law. Our records indicate that Mr. Morrison has a biological child, Sarah Rose Collins Bennett, who may be entitled to a portion of his estate. Please contact our offices at your earliest convenience to discuss this matter. Daniel was dead. Emma read the letter 3 times, unable to process the words. The man who had abandoned her, who had tried to steal her daughter's inheritance, who had shown her exactly what kind of person he was in that courtroom 2 years ago. Dead. She did not know what to feel. Relief, guilt for feeling relief, sadness for a wasted life, anger that he had escaped any real consequences for his choices, All of those emotions swirled inside her, refusing to settle into anything coherent. She called Patricia Holloway immediately. "I got a letter from a law firm in Chicago. Daniel's dead." Patricia was silent for a moment. "How did he die?" "The letter doesn't say, just that he died intestate and Sarah might be entitled to part of his estate." "Do you want her to receive anything from him?" Emma had not considered that question. Did she want Sarah connected to Daniel in any way, even through money she would not need? "I don't know. What do you think?" "I think you should find out what we're dealing with before you make any decisions. Let me contact this firm and get more information. We need to know how Daniel died, what assets he had, and whether there are any strings attached." Strings? Debts, obligations, other claimants. An inheritance isn't always a gift, Emma. Sometimes it's a burden. Emma hung up the phone and sat in the kitchen for a long time, staring at the letter. Daniel Morrison was dead, and somehow, even from beyond the grave, he was still finding ways to complicate her life. Patricia called back 2 days later with information that changed everything. Daniel didn't just die, Emma. He was murdered. The word hit her like a physical blow. Murdered? How? By who? "The police are still investigating. He was found in his apartment with a gunshot wound to the chest. No forced entry, no signs of struggle. Whoever killed him, he knew them." Emma's mind was racing. Do they have any suspects? That's the complicated part. Daniel was involved with some very dangerous people before he died. He'd been gambling heavily, running up debts with loan sharks. The police think he may have been killed over money he owed. So it has nothing to do with me or Sarah. That's what I assumed at first. But Emma, there's more. Patricia's voice grew heavy. Daniel had been keeping files, documents, photographs, records. Some of them involve you. What kind of documents, Jobin? Surveillance photos of your farm, financial records from the Bennett estate, legal research about challenging your inheritance. Patricia paused. He never gave up, Emma. He was still trying to find a way to get his hands on your money. Emma felt sick. For 2 years, she had believed Daniel was out of her life. For 2 years, she had been building something beautiful, believing the threat was behind her. But he had been watching, planning, waiting. Is there anything in those files that could hurt us? I don't think so. His legal research was sloppy, full of dead ends and wishful thinking. But Emma, the police want to talk to you. To me, why? Because you're connected to Daniel, because he was investigating you before he died, because in murder investigations they always look at anyone who might have had a motive. The room seemed to tilt. They think I might have killed him. They don't think anything yet. They're just gathering information. But you should be prepared for questions. Where were you on October 3rd? Can anyone verify your whereabouts? Did you have any contact with Daniel in the past 2 years? Emma's hands were shaking so badly she had to set down the phone. This could not be happening. After everything she had been through, after fighting so hard to build a life for herself and Sarah, she could not be a suspect in a murder investigation. David found her sitting on the porch an hour later, staring at nothing. Emma, what's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost. She told him everything. The letter, the murder, the police who wanted to question her. David's face went pale. You can't be serious. They actually think you might have killed him. Patricia says they're just being thorough. But David, what if they don't believe me? What if they decide I had motive and opportunity? I did have motive. Everyone knows what he tried to do to us. Having motive isn't the same as committing murder. You were here, Emma. You were here with me and Sarah and Dorothy. 100 people in this town can vouch for you. Can they vouch for October 3rd specifically? Do you remember what we were doing that day? David frowned, trying to recall. That was a Wednesday, right? I think we were at the farmer's market in the morning. Then I had to deal with the broken irrigation line in the afternoon. And I was here with Sarah, alone for most of the day. But you couldn't have driven to Chicago and back in that time. It's what 12 hours round trip someone would have noticed you were gone. Emma wanted to believe him, but the fear was taking root, spreading through her chest like ice. What if they don't care about logic? What if they just want someone to blame? David took her hands in his. Then we'll fight, the same way we fought Daniel when he tried to take Sarah, the same way you've fought every obstacle in your entire life. You're not alone in this, Emma. Whatever happens, I'm right here. She leaned into him, drawing strength from his presence. But deep down, she knew this was different from the custody battle. This was not about money or inheritance or parental rights. This was about murder. And once the police started looking at you for murder, your life was never the same, man. The detectives arrived 3 days later. There were 2 of them, a man and a woman, both with the tired eyes and careful expressions of people who had seen too much of human nature's dark side. They introduced themselves as Detective Martinez and Detective Chen, no relation to David, and asked if Emma had time to answer a few questions. She invited them into the parlor, the same room where she had first played her mother's piano, and offered them coffee that they politely declined. "Ms. Collins Bennett," Detective Martinez began. "We're investigating the death of Daniel Morrison. I understand you knew him." "He was my daughter's biological father. We were together briefly about 3 years ago." "And how would you describe your relationship?" "There was no relationship. He abandoned me when I told him I was pregnant. I didn't see him again until he showed up here trying to get custody of Sarah." "The custody case. Yes, we've reviewed those records." Detective Martinez flipped through a small notebook. "Mr. Morrison's petition was withdrawn after you challenged him to give up any claim to your inheritance. Is that correct?" "Yes, he wasn't interested in being a father. He just wanted money." "That must have made you angry." Emma recognized the trap. "It made me disappointed, in him in the situation, but I was mostly relieved when he withdrew. I just wanted him out of our lives." "And was he out of your lives?" "I thought so, until Patricia told me he'd been keeping files on me." Detective Chen leaned forward. "You knew about the surveillance?" "Not until after he died. Patricia found out from your investigation." The detectives exchanged a glance. "Ms. Collins Bennett, where were you on October 3rd of this year?" "Here, at the farm. I was with my daughter most of the day." "Can anyone verify that?" "David Chen was here in the morning before the farmer's market. Dorothy Henderson stopped by around lunchtime. My daughter was with me the entire day." "Your daughter is 2 years old." "Yes." "So she can't exactly provide an alibi." Emma felt her temper flare. "Are you accusing me of something, Detective?" "We're not accusing anyone. We're just gathering information." "Then let me be clear. I did not kill Daniel Morrison. I had no contact with him after the custody hearing. I didn't know where he lived, didn't know he was gambling, didn't know anything about his life. When I got the letter from that law firm, it was the first I'd heard about him in 2 years." "The letter informing you about his estate?" "Yes." "Which your daughter may be entitled to inherit." Emma understood suddenly where this was going. "You think I killed him for money?" "We're exploring all possibilities." "I inherited over $2 million from my grandfather. I own 320 acres of prime farmland, free and clear. I have no need for whatever Daniel Morrison might have left behind." "People kill for all kinds of reasons, Ms. Collins Bennett. Money is just one of them." "I didn't kill him." "Then you won't mind if we look around the property?" Emma's heart was pounding, but she forced her voice to stay steady. "Do you have a warrant? We were hoping you'd cooperate voluntarily. Innocent people usually have nothing to hide. Innocent people also know their rights. If you want to search my property, get a warrant." Detective Martinez's expression hardened. "We'll be in touch, Ms. Collins Bennett. Don't leave town." After they left, Emma collapsed onto the sofa, her whole body shaking. David was at her side immediately. "What happened? What did they say?" "They think I did it. They think I killed Daniel for his money." "That's insane. You have more money than he ever had." "They don't care. They've already made up their minds." Emma looked up at him, fear stark in her eyes. "David, what if they arrest me? What happens to Sarah?" "They're not going to arrest you. They don't have any evidence because there isn't any evidence. You didn't do anything wrong." "Since when has that mattered? I've been screwed over by systems my whole life. Foster care, social services, the courts. They don't care about truth. They care about convenience." David pulled her close. "This is different. You have resources now. You have Patricia. You have the community. You have me. We won't let them railroad you." Emma wanted to believe him, but the fear had its claws in her now, and it would not let go. The investigation continued for weeks. Emma lived in a state of constant anxiety, jumping every time the phone rang, and watching for police cars on the road to the farm. She could not eat, could not sleep, could barely function. Patricia worked tirelessly to prove Emma's innocence, hiring private investigators to trace Daniel's final months, building a timeline that would show Emma had no opportunity to commit the murder. And then 3 weeks after the detective's visit, everything changed. Patricia called at 7 a.m. on a Thursday morning. "Emma, I need you to come to my office right away. There's been a development." "Good development or bad development? Just come, please." Emma drove to town with her heart in her throat, leaving Sarah with Dorothy. Whatever Patricia had to tell her, she did not want her daughter anywhere nearby. Patricia's office was in a small building on Main Street, shared with an accountant and a real estate agent. Emma had been there dozens of times over the past 2 years, signing documents discussing the estate, building a professional relationship that had become something like friendship. But she had never seen Patricia look the way she looked now, pale, shaken, like she had seen something she could not unsee. "Sit down, Emma. This is going to be difficult to hear." Emma sat, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "The police made an arrest last night. They caught Daniel's killer." Relief flooded through Emma so intensely she nearly burst into tears. "Thank God! Who was it? One of the loan sharks?" "No." Patricia's voice was strange. "Emma, the person they arrested. It's someone you know." "What? Who?" Patricia took a deep breath. "Margaret Chen. David's mother." The world stopped. Emma heard the words, but they refused to make sense. Margaret Chen. David's mother. A woman she had never met, a woman David rarely talked about, a woman who lived somewhere in Wyoming and had not been part of David's life for years. "I don't understand. Why would David's mother kill Daniel?" "Because Daniel was blackmailing her." Patricia pulled out a folder and spread documents across her desk. Police reports, financial records, photographs. Margaret Chen has a past she's been hiding. 25 years ago, she was involved in a hit-and-run accident that killed a teenage girl. She fled the scene, was never caught. She's been running from that secret her entire life. Emma's head was spinning. "What does that have to do with Daniel?" "Daniel found out about it. I don't know how. Maybe through his gambling connections, maybe through his own research into your life. But he found out, and he started blackmailing Margaret, threatening to expose her unless she paid." "But why would he blackmail David's mother? David has nothing to do with my inheritance." Patricia's expression grew even more grave. "Emma, Daniel knew about your relationship with David. He knew that if he could get leverage over David's family, he might be able to use it against you somehow. He was building a web trying to find any angle he could exploit. So Margaret killed him to keep her secret safe." That's what the police believe. They found evidence in Daniel's apartment connecting him to Margaret. The blackmail payments, the threats, all of it. She's confessed. Emma sat in stunned silence trying to process what she was hearing. Margaret Chen, a woman who had killed once before, 25 years ago, and had killed again to keep that secret buried. David's mother. "Does David know?" Patricia nodded slowly. "The police told him this morning. I wanted you to hear it from me before you saw him." "How is he?" "I don't know. I haven't spoken to him. But Emma, this is going to be devastating for him. His mother is going to prison for murder. His entire understanding of his family is about to collapse." Emma thought about David, about everything he had done for her, everything he had been through. The alcoholic father, the estranged mother, the years of building a life alone on land that belonged to someone else. Now this. I have to go to him. "Emma, wait. There's something else you need to know." Patricia's voice made her stop. "What?" "The police investigation turned up something else. Something about David." Emma's blood went cold. "What about David?" "He knew about his mother's past, about the hit and run. He's known since he was 18. The words hit Emma like a physical blow. David knew. All this time, all these months together, and he had been carrying a secret just as dark as his mother's. "He never told me. He never told anyone. It's been his family's deepest shame for 25 years. Patricia leaned forward. "Emma, I'm not telling you this to hurt you. I'm telling you because you need to make a decision. David lied to you. Not directly, but by omission. He knew his mother had killed someone, and he kept that secret even as your relationship deepened. That's different from being involved in Daniel's murder." "Is it he knew his mother was capable of killing? He knew she was being blackmailed. And he never said a word, not even when you were being investigated, not even when your entire life was at stake." Emma's mind was reeling. She thought about all the times David had comforted her, reassured her, promised that everything would be okay. Had he known even then that his own mother was involved, "I need to talk to him." "Are you sure that's wise?" "I need to hear his side. I need to understand." Patricia nodded reluctantly. "Be careful, Emma. The man you thought you knew may not exist." Emma found David at the edge of the north field, standing alone, staring at mountains he could not see through the tears in his eyes. She approached slowly, not wanting to startle him. "David?" He turned. His face was ravaged, streaked with tears, aged 10 years in a single morning. "You heard?" "Patricia told me?" He laughed bitterly. "Of course she did. I'm sure she told you everything. About my mother. About what I knew. She said you've known since you were 18. I was 17 when I found out, going through my mother's things, looking for money she'd hidden from my father. I found a newspaper clipping about the accident. A girl named Jennifer Walsh, 15 years old, hit by a car while walking home from school. Driver never found. And you knew it was your mother. She told me herself, broke down crying, confessed everything. She'd been drinking, ran the red light, panicked when she hit the girl. She drove away and spent the next 20 years pretending it never happened. Why didn't you tell the police? David's face crumpled. She's my mother, Emma. Whatever she did, whatever she is, she's still my mother. I couldn't be the one to destroy her. She destroyed herself, David. She made her choices. I know that. I've always known that. But knowing something and acting on it are two different things. He looked at her with desperate eyes. Sound familiar? Emma flinched. Those were almost exactly the words Walter had used in his deathbed confession. You should have told me. When we started getting serious, when you saw what the investigation was doing to me, you should have told me your mother might be involved. I didn't know she was involved. I knew Daniel was blackmailing her, but I thought she was just paying him off. I never imagined she would actually kill him. You knew she was capable of it. People aren't defined by the worst thing they've ever done, Emma. My mother made a terrible mistake 25 years ago. She's lived with that guilt every day since. That doesn't make her a monster. She killed someone, David, and then she killed again to cover it up. That's not a mistake. That's a pattern. David had no answer for that. They stood in silence for a long moment, the weight of revelation pressing down on both of them. What happens now? Emma finally asked. I don't know. My mother is going to prison. My entire life has been built on a lie I helped maintain, and the woman I love is looking at me like I'm a stranger. You are a stranger. The David I thought I knew would never have kept something like this from me. I was trying to protect you. No, you were trying to protect yourself and your mother. I was just collateral. David stepped toward her. Emma, please. I know I made mistakes. I know I should have been honest with you. But everything else between us, everything we've built together, that was real. My feelings for you are real. Are they, or was being with me just another way of hiding, another distraction from the truth? That's not fair. None of this is fair, David. I've spent my whole life being lied to by people who claim to care about me. My grandfather watched me from a distance for 16 years. Daniel pretended to want reconciliation when all he wanted was money. And now you, keeping secrets that put my freedom at risk. I never meant to hurt you. That's what everyone says. That's what Walter said, what Daniel said. Nobody ever means to hurt anyone. But the hurt happens anyway. Tears were streaming down her face now, mixing with the anger and the grief and the crushing sense of betrayal. She had trusted David, opened herself to him in ways she had never opened herself to anyone, and he had been lying to her the entire time. I need space, she said finally. I need time to think about what this means. Emma, please, don't push me away, not now. You pushed yourself away, David. The moment you decided to keep this secret, you chose your mother over me, over us, over everything we were building. She turned and walked back toward the farmhouse, leaving him standing alone in the field. Behind her, she heard him call her name. Once, twice, 3 times. She did not look back. The following weeks were the hardest of Emma's life. She went through the motions of daily existence, caring for Sarah, maintaining the farm, attending to business matters that demanded attention. But inside, she was hollow, empty, betrayed by the one person she had allowed herself to trust completely. David tried to reach her. Phone calls, letters showing up at the farm, only to be turned away by Dorothy, who had appointed herself Emma's fierce protector. Each attempt made Emma feel worse, not better. Each reminder of what they had lost deepened the wound. Margaret Chen was arraigned on murder charges. The news covered the story extensively, a small-town tragedy with all the elements of a crime drama. The hit and run from 25 years ago was dredged up. The victim's family interviewed. The web of blackmail and violence laid bare for public consumption. Emma watched none of it. She could not bear to see David's face in the background of news footage, could not stand to hear analysts speculate about what he had known and when he had known it. Dorothy tried to help. She brought food. Emma could not eat. Offered comfort. Emma could not accept, sat with her in silence when words failed them both. He loves you, Dorothy said one evening when the house was quiet and Sarah was asleep. Whatever mistakes he made, his feelings for you are real. How can you say that he lied to me for months? He protected his mother. It was wrong. It was misguided, but it came from love. The same way Walter's mistakes came from love. The same way your mother's choices came from love. Dorothy took her hand. Love makes us do terrible things sometimes. That doesn't mean the love itself isn't real. I can't trust him anymore. Maybe not right now, but trust can be rebuilt, Emma, if both people are willing to do the work. I don't know if I'm willing. I don't know if I have it in me to forgive another betrayal. Dorothy was quiet for a long moment. Let me tell you something about my husband, Robert. 43 years we were married before he died. Best man I ever knew. But in our 10th year together, I discovered he'd been lying to me about something important. What was it? He had a daughter from before we met. A child he'd fathered with a woman who moved away and never told him about the pregnancy. He found out when the girl was 8 years old, and instead of telling me, he started secretly sending money to support her. Why would he hide that? Fear. He was afraid I'd leave him. Afraid I'd see it as a betrayal of our marriage, even though it happened before we met. Dorothy's eyes grew distant with memory. I found the canceled checks one day, almost left him over it, had my bags packed and everything. But you stayed. I stayed, because Robert got on his knees and sobbed like a baby and told me he'd been terrified of losing me every single day for 2 years, because I realized that his lie, terrible as it was, came from love, from fear of losing the life we'd built together. That's not the same as hiding a murder. No, but the principle is similar. People lie to protect what they love. It's wrong, but it's human. Dorothy squeezed her hand. I'm not telling you to forgive David. I'm just telling you that forgiveness is possible if you want it to be. Emma thought about those words long after Dorothy left. She thought about Walter dying in that hospice bed, begging for a chance to explain. She thought about her mother's letter urging her to choose love over anger. She thought about all the people in her life who had failed her, and all the ways she had failed them in return. Was she willing to let another relationship be destroyed by pride and fear? Was she strong enough to try again? 3 days later, Emma drove to David's small house on the edge of his leased property. He answered the door looking like a man who had not slept in weeks, unshaven, hollow-eyed, wearing the same clothes she had seen him in the last time they talked. Emma, can I come in? He stepped aside wordlessly, and she entered the small living room she had visited dozens of times before. Everything looked the same, but felt entirely different. I've been doing a lot of thinking, she said, not sitting down. About you, about us, about what happened. And I'm still angry. I'm still hurt. I don't know if I can ever fully trust you again. David's face fell. But I'm also tired, Emma continued. Tired of losing people. Tired of letting fear and anger make decisions for me. Tired of repeating the same patterns that destroyed my family for generations. What are you saying? I'm saying I'm willing to try. Not to go back to what we were because that's not possible, but to start over. To rebuild something new with total honesty this time. David's eyes filled with tears. Emma, I'm so sorry for everything, for lying, for putting you at risk, for not being the man you deserved. I know, and I'm sorry too, for shutting you out, for not giving you a chance to explain, for assuming the worst. You had every right to assume the worst. Maybe, but holding on to that anger wasn't helping anyone. It was just making me miserable. She took a step toward him. David, I don't know if we can fix what's broken between us, but I want to try. If you're willing to be completely honest with me from now on, no more secrets, no more lies. I want to try. He crossed the distance between them and took her hands in his. No more secrets, I promise. Whatever you want to know about my past, my mother, anything, I'll tell you everything. That's all I'm asking, honesty, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. David pulled her into his arm and Emma let herself be held. She did not know what the future would bring. Did not know if they could truly rebuild what had been destroyed. But she knew she was tired of being alone, tired of pushing away the people who tried to love her. Her mother had asked her to choose forgiveness. Her grandfather had begged her to break the cycle. Maybe this was how it started, not with grand gestures or perfect understanding, but with small steps towards something better. One honest conversation at a time, one forgiven mistake at a time, one day at a time. Emma held on to David and let herself hope. 5 years had passed since Emma first drove into Harvest Creek with nothing but a duffel bag and a broken heart. Sarah Rose was 7 years old now, a fierce, bright, stubborn child who ruled the farmhouse with an iron will and a laugh that could fill every room. She had her grandmother Sarah's eyes, her great-grandfather Walter's determination, and her mother's refusal to give up on anything she set her mind to. David Chen had become Emma's husband 2 years ago in a small ceremony in the garden behind the farmhouse. Dorothy Henderson had officiated, having gotten ordained online specifically for the occasion. The whole town had attended, filling the property with laughter and tears and enough casseroles to feed an army. Their son Walter David Chen Bennett had been born a year after that. They called him Walt, and at 14 months old, he was already showing signs of the same stubborn streak that ran through both sides of his family. The farm had grown beyond anything Emma could have imagined. They had expanded into agritourism, hosting school groups, and city families who wanted to experience rural life. The Bennett Farm brand was known throughout the region for organic produce, sustainable practices, and the kind of authentic hospitality that could not be faked. Emma had found her calling in ways she never expected. She gave piano lessons to children from 3 counties, just as her mother had done before everything fell apart. She had written a book about her journey about foster care and family secrets and the possibility of redemption, and it had become a modest success. The royalties went into a scholarship fund for aging out foster youth, named for Sarah Collins, helping kids like Emma had once been find their footing in a world that did not make it easy. Life was full, rich, blessed beyond measure. But some wounds never fully healed. Emma thought about Walter often, especially in quiet moments when the house was still. She would sit at her mother's piano and play Clair de Lune, and she would remember the dying man who had given her everything too late, the grandfather whose pride had cost them all so much. She had forgiven him. Not all at once, but gradually over years of living in the house he had kept for her reading letters he had written, but never sent, understanding more and more how fear could paralyze even the strongest love. Forgiveness did not mean forgetting. It did not mean excusing. It just meant refusing to let the anger define her anymore. David's mother, Margaret, was serving a 20-year sentence in a women's correctional facility in Wyoming. David visited her twice a year, and Emma had gone with him once, watching through reinforced glass as her husband tried to maintain a relationship with a woman who had destroyed so much. That visit had changed something in Emma. Seeing Margaret's face, the lines of grief and regret carved deep into her features, Emma had understood something she had not fully grasped before. Everyone carried burdens. Everyone made choices they regretted. The difference between tragedy and redemption was not the absence of mistakes, but the willingness to face them. Margaret would never be free again, but she had stopped running. And in some strange way that had brought a kind of peace to the Chen family that they had never known before. The morning everything changed again started like any other Saturday. Emma was in the kitchen making pancakes while Sarah Rose set the table with exaggerated care, placing each fork and knife with the precision of a surgeon. Walt was in his high chair smearing banana across his face with obvious delight. David was outside checking on the horses, a new addition to the farm that Sarah had begged for until her parents finally relented. The doorbell rang. Emma wiped her hands on a towel and went to answer it, expecting Dorothy or perhaps one of the weekend volunteers who helped with the agritourism program. Instead, she found a young woman standing on the porch. The woman was in her early 20s with dark hair and nervous eyes and a face that seemed somehow familiar, though Emma could not immediately place it. "Can I help you? Are you Emma Collins Bennett?" "Yes." The woman took a deep breath, as if steeling herself for something difficult. "My name is Jennifer Walsh. My mother was Jennifer Walsh Sr. She died 25 years ago in a hit-and-run accident." Emma's blood turned to ice. Jennifer Walsh, the girl Margaret Chen had killed, the secret that had set everything in motion. "I don't understand," Emma said slowly. "Why are you here?" "Because I need to talk to you, about Margaret Chen, about what happened to my mother, about all of it." Emma stood frozen in the doorway, her mind racing. This woman, this stranger, was the daughter of the victim, the living legacy of a tragedy that had shaped her own life in ways she was still discovering. "Please," Jennifer said. "I've come a long way. I just need a few minutes of your time." Emma stepped aside. "Come in." They sat in the parlor, the same room where Emma had first played her mother's piano, where she had read Walter's letters, where she had begun to understand the complicated truth of her family. Jennifer perched on the edge of the sofa, her hands twisting in her lap. "I was 2 years old when my mother died," she began. "I don't remember her at all. Just photographs, stories my grandmother told me before she passed. I grew up knowing that someone had killed my mother and gotten away with it, that whoever was driving that car had just driven off and left her to die on the side of the road." Emma listened in silence, her heart aching for this woman who had lost so much before she was even old enough to understand. "When they finally arrested Margaret Chen, I thought I would feel closure. Finally, after 25 years, I would know who had taken my mother from me. I would see justice done." "Did you feel closure?" Jennifer shook her head. "I felt empty. Margaret Chen was just a name, a face on the news. She didn't match the monster I had built in my head. She was just a broken woman who had made a terrible choice and spent the rest of her life running from it." "I'm sorry," Emma said. "I'm sorry for what happened to your mother, for what you've had to live with." "That's not why I'm here." Jennifer looked up, her eyes intense. I'm here because I read your book. The one about your grandfather and your mother and how you found your way back to your family. Emma had not expected that. You read my book 3 times, and every time I read it, I kept thinking about my own story, about how anger and grief had shaped my entire life just like it shaped yours, about how I had spent 20 years hating a faceless stranger, letting that hatred poison everything. That's understandable. She killed your mother? I know, and I'm not saying she doesn't deserve to be in prison. She does, but Emma, your book made me realize something. Hating her wasn't hurting her, it was only hurting me. Tears were streaming down Jennifer's face now. I've been so angry for so long. Angry at the driver who killed my mother, angry at the police who couldn't find her, angry at God for taking my mom away before I even knew her. And all that anger, it didn't bring her back. It didn't change anything, it just made me miserable. Emma reached out and took Jennifer's hand. I know exactly what you mean. I spent years being angry at my grandfather for what he did to my mother. Angry at Daniel for abandoning me. Angry at the whole world for making me feel so alone. How did you let it go? I didn't let it go all at once. It happened slowly over time. I had to make a choice every single day to focus on what I had instead of what I had lost. To build something new instead of being destroyed by the past. Jennifer squeezed her hand. That's why I'm here. I want to learn how to do that. I want to stop being the girl whose mother was killed and start being someone who can actually live. Have you talked to Margaret? Jennifer's face went pale. What? Margaret Chen. Have you talked to her? No, I couldn't. I don't know what I would say. Maybe that's where you need to start. Emma leaned forward. I didn't get to have real conversations with my grandfather. He died the night I met him. But David visits his mother, and I've seen what those conversations have done for both of them. It's painful, it's awkward, it's hard. But it's also healing. You think I should visit the woman who killed my mother? I think forgiveness is impossible until you see the person you're forgiving as a human being. As long as Margaret Chen is just a monster in your head, she'll have power over you. But if you can look her in the eyes and see the brokenness, the regret, the humanity, maybe you can start to let go. Jennifer was silent for a long moment. Will you come with me? The question surprised Emma. What? I can't do it alone. I know we've just met, but reading your book, I felt like I knew you. Like you were the only person in the world who might understand what I'm going through. Jennifer's voice broke. Please, I need someone who's been through this. Someone who knows how to face the unfaceable. Emma thought about all the people who had helped her along the way. Patricia, who had guided her through legal nightmares. Dorothy, who had become the grandmother she never had. David, who had loved her even when she did not know how to let herself be loved. She had not gotten through any of it alone. None of them had. Yes, she said. I'll come with you. The prison visit was scheduled for the following week. Emma left the children with David and Dorothy, kissing Sarah Rose goodbye and holding Walt close, trying not to think about what she was about to do. The drive to Wyoming took 6 hours. Jennifer sat in the passenger seat, alternating between nervous chatter and terrified silence. Emma let her talk or be quiet as needed, understanding that some journeys could not be rushed. They arrived at the correctional facility in the late afternoon. The building was gray and imposing, surrounded by fences topped with razor wire. Emma had been here once before when she visited with David, but the sight still made her stomach clench. The visitor processing took over an hour. Forms to fill out, IDs to verify belongings to store. Finally, they were led to a visiting room with plastic chairs and reinforced glass dividers. Margaret Chen was already waiting. She looked older than Emma remembered. Grayer, more fragile. Prison had not been kind to her, but there was something in her eyes that had not been there before. A kind of peace, perhaps, or at least an acceptance. Jennifer approached the glass partition on shaking legs. Emma stayed a few feet back, close enough to support, but far enough to give them space. You know who I am, Jennifer said. It was not a question. Margaret nodded slowly. Jennifer Walsh, I've seen your picture. You look like your mother. Don't. Jennifer's voice cracked. Don't talk about her like you knew her. I didn't know her. I only knew what I took from her from you. Margaret's voice was steady, resigned. I've had 25 years to think about what I did. To imagine the life she should have had, the daughter she should have raised. There's nothing I can say that will make it right. Then why did I come here? What's the point of any of this? I don't know. Maybe there isn't a point. Maybe you just needed to see my face to know that I'm real, that I'm not some faceless demon. Maybe you needed to tell me how much you hate me. I do hate you. I know. I hate myself too." Margaret's eyes filled with tears. "I've hated myself every day since it happened. That hate is what made me run, what made me lie, what made me destroy even more lives trying to protect myself. Hate is all I've known for 25 years. Jennifer was crying now, 2 tears streaming down her face. "She was my mother. I never got to know her. I never got to hear her voice or feel her arms around me. Because of you. Because of me." Margaret did not flinch from the accusation. "I took her from you. I took everything from you. And nothing I do will ever give it back. So what am I supposed to do with that? How am I supposed to move on? I don't know. I'm the last person who should be giving advice on moving forward. But I can tell you what I've learned in here in the years since I finally stopped running." "What?" "Hate is a prison worse than any building. It locks you inside yourself, keeps you stuck in the worst moment of your life. The only way out is to let go. Not for the person who hurt you, but for yourself." Jennifer turned to look at Emma, her eyes pleading. Emma stepped forward. "She's right," Emma said quietly. "I know it sounds impossible right now. I know it feels like letting go means betraying your mother's memory. But holding on to the hate doesn't honor her. It just keeps you from living the life she would have wanted for you." "How do you know what she would have wanted?" "Because every mother wants the same thing for her child. Happiness, peace, a future that isn't defined by tragedy." Emma's voice was thick with emotion. "My mother died when I was 8. She made terrible mistakes, struggled with addiction, lost everything she worked for. But in her last letter to me, she didn't talk about any of that. She talked about wanting me to be happy, wanting me to choose love over anger, wanting me to break free from the cycle that had destroyed our family." Jennifer turned back to Margaret. "If I forgive you, does that mean what you did doesn't matter?" "No," Margaret said. "What I did will always matter. It will always be wrong. Forgiveness isn't about erasing the past. It's about refusing to let the past control your future." The 3 women sat in silence for a long moment. Then Jennifer did something Emma had not expected. She placed her hand against the glass partition. Margaret stared at it for a moment, then slowly raised her own hand to match. "I don't forgive you yet," Jennifer said. "I don't know if I ever will completely, but I'm going to try, for myself, for my mother, for the life I want to have." "That's all anyone can do?" Margaret whispered. "Try?" The drive back to Colorado was quiet. Jennifer slept for most of it, exhausted by the emotional weight of what she had been through. Emma drove in silence, thinking about everything she had witnessed. Forgiveness was not a destination. It was a journey. Sometimes it took years. Sometimes it took a single conversation. But it always required the same thing: a willingness to see humanity in the people who had hurt you, a choice to build a future instead of drowning in the past, a recognition that holding on to anger only imprisoned yourself. When they arrived back at the farm, David was waiting on the porch with Sarah Rose and Walt. He looked worried, but his face softened when he saw Emma step out of the car. "How did it go?" "Better than I expected. Harder, too."
Chubby.
Jennifer had woken up and was stretching her cramped legs. David extended his hand to her. "I'm David, Emma's husband." "I know who you are, Margaret's son." Jennifer shook his hand. "She talked about you. She's proud of the life you've built." David's jaw tightened, but he nodded. She said you were the one good thing she did in her life. That watching you build something beautiful was the only thing that kept her going some days." Emma saw her husband's eyes fill with tears he was too proud to shed. "Thank you for telling me that." Jennifer stayed for dinner that night. She played with Sarah Rose and held baby Walt and listened to stories about the farm and the community and the life Emma and David had created together. By the time she left the next morning, she had exchanged phone numbers with Emma and promised to stay in touch. "You saved me," Jennifer said as she hugged Emma goodbye. "You didn't have to help me, but you did. I'll never forget that."
C'est quoi
We all need help sometimes. That's how it works. Someone helps you, and then you help someone else, and eventually the world gets a little bit better. Emma watched Jennifer's car disappear down the driveway, feeling something warm expand in her chest. She had come to Harvest Creek 7 years ago with nothing. Broken, alone, convinced that she was unworthy of love and destined to repeat her family's tragic mistakes. She had been wrong about all of it. That evening, Emma gathered her family in the parlor. David sat on the sofa with Walt in his lap. Sarah Rose was cross-legged on the floor, sorting through a box of photographs that Dorothy had brought over earlier that week. "Mommy, who's this?" Sarah was holding a photograph Emma had not seen in years. a picture of a young woman with bright eyes and a radiant smile holding a baby in her arms. "That's your grandmother, my mother. Her name was Sarah, just like you. She's pretty. She was beautiful, inside and out." Emma took the photograph and studied it, remembering the woman she had barely known. "She loved music just like you do. She played the piano every day and she sang like an angel." What happened to her? Emma looked at David. This was a conversation they had known would come eventually, but Sarah Rose was only 7. How much truth could a child that age handle? "She got sick," Emma said carefully. "When I was a little girl, she got very sick and eventually she died. But before she did, she wrote me a letter telling me how much she loved me and asking me to have a good life." "Do you still have the letter?" "I do. I'll show it to you when you're older, when you can understand all the things she was trying to say." Sarah Rose was quiet for a moment, processing. "Is that why you named me Sarah after her?" "Yes. I wanted you to carry a piece of her with you. I wanted her name to live on through someone who would do amazing things with their life." "I'm going to do amazing things. I know you are. You already do amazing things every day." Sarah Rose grinned, satisfied with that answer, and went back to sorting photographs. But Emma kept holding the picture of her mother, feeling the weight of all the years between them. "I wish you could see this," she whispered too quietly for anyone else to hear. "I wish you could see who I became, who your granddaughter is becoming. I hope you're proud." She could almost feel her mother's presence in the room, could almost hear the melody of Clair de Lune drifting through the air. Maybe that was foolish. Maybe the dead could not hear or see or feel anything at all. But Emma chose to believe otherwise. She chose to believe that somewhere, somehow Sarah Collins knew that her sacrifice had not been in vain, that the daughter she had loved so fiercely had built a life worth living, that the cycle had finally been broken. Later that night, after the children were asleep and the house was quiet, Emma sat at the piano in the parlor. The music box stood on top of the instrument, its roses carved deep into the aged wood. Emma wound it carefully and let it play the familiar notes of Clair de Lune filling the room. David appeared in the doorway. "You okay?" "Better than okay. I was just thinking about everything, how far we've come, how much has changed." He crossed the room and sat beside her on the piano bench. 7 years ago, you were a pregnant waitress with nothing but a mysterious phone call and a whole lot of anger. And now I have a farm, a family, a community, and a husband who somehow puts up with all my baggage. Your baggage is my favorite thing about you." Emma laughed and leaned into him. "I used to be so afraid," she said quietly, "afraid that I would repeat my family's mistakes, that pride and stubbornness would destroy everything I tried to build, that I was doomed to end up alone. And now I know that fear is just a feeling. It doesn't have to control you. The mistakes my grandfather made, the choices my mother struggled with, they taught me what not to do. They showed me that love has to be expressed, not just felt, that forgiveness is stronger than pride, that family is something you build, not just something you're born into." David kissed her forehead. "Walter would be proud of you. Sarah would be proud of you. Hell, I'm proud of you. I'm proud of us, of what we've built together." The music box wound down its final notes, fading into silence. Emma looked around the parlor at the photographs on the walls, the piano her mother had played, the life she had created in this place that had waited for her for so long. She thought about the pregnant woman she had been 7 years ago, standing in a truck stop diner watching her baby's father walk away. That woman had believed she had nothing. No family, no history, no place in the world. She had been so wrong. Emma had everything she ever needed. It had just taken her a while to find it. The next morning, Emma woke early and walked out to the small cemetery behind the farmhouse. 3 headstones stood there now, shaded by an old oak tree that had been planted by her great-great-grandfather. Eleanor Bennett, beloved wife and mother, 1943 to 1974. Walter James Bennett. He found his courage at the end, 1940 to 2018, and a newer stone one Emma had added last year, Sarah Eleanor Collins. She chose love, 1971 to 2002. Her mother's body was buried in Denver, in a pauper's grave, horses that Emma had never been able to find. But the memorial stone felt right. It gave Sarah a place in the family plot, a recognition that she had always belonged here even when pride and fear had kept her away. Emma knelt beside her mother's stone and placed fresh wildflowers against the granite. "I brought someone to meet you," she said softly. Sarah Rose appeared at her side, holding baby Walt's hand as he toddled unsteadily across the grass. "This is your grandmother," Emma told her daughter, "and your great-grandmother, and your great-great-grandfather. This is where we come from." Sarah Rose studied the headstones with serious eyes. "They're all here underground. Not their spirits, just what's left of their bodies, the parts of them that really matter, the love and the memories and the lessons they taught those live on in us. In me. In you. In Walt. In everyone who comes after. Emma pulled her daughter close. We carry them with us, Sarah. The good parts and the bad parts. The triumphs and the mistakes. And it's our job to take what they gave us and make something better. How do we do that? By loving each other. By being honest even when it's hard. By forgiving people who hurt us not because they deserve it, but because holding on to anger only hurts ourselves. Emma looked at the 3 headstones, thinking of all the pain and all the love they represented. By remembering that we're not alone, that we never were. David appeared on the path behind them carrying a thermos of coffee and a blanket. I thought you might be out here. Room for a few more. They spread the blanket on the grass and sat together as a family watching the sun rise over the mountains. Walt babbled happily, grabbing handfuls of grass. Sarah Rose asked questions about the people buried beneath them, and Emma answered as honestly as she could. David held his wife's hand and said nothing, but his presence spoke volumes. This was what Walter had wanted for her, what Sarah had dreamed of in her final hours, what generations of Bennetts had hoped for without knowing how to achieve it. A family. Whole and imperfect and beautifully real. Emma looked at her children, at her husband, at the land that had been in her family for over a century. She thought about the pregnant woman at the orphanage who had believed she was alone. She thought about the dying farmer who had called her his only heir. She thought about every twist and turn that had brought her to this moment, this place, this life. And she understood finally the truth that had been waiting for her all along. She had never been alone. Not really. Even in her darkest moments, even when she believed she had no one, she had been connected to something larger than herself. A history, a legacy, a love that transcended time and distance and even death. The people who came before her had made terrible mistakes. They had let pride destroy relationships and fear prevent reconciliation. They had watched from a distance when they should have reached out. But they had also loved. Fiercely, imperfectly, desperately. And that love had survived everything passed down through generations like a torch that refused to go out. Emma was the keeper of that torch now, and she would carry it forward into a future brighter than anyone in her family had dared to imagine. She stood up and pulled David to his feet. Come on, let's go home. We are home. I know, Emma smiled, feeling the weight of all her years lifting from her shoulders. I finally know. They walked back to the farmhouse together. Sarah Rose running ahead, Walt balanced on David's hip, the morning sun warming their faces. Behind them, the headstones stood silent and patient, keeping watch over the land they had protected for 5 generations. And in the kitchen of the old farmhouse, the music box sat on its shelf, ready to play whenever someone needed reminding of where they came from. The story of the Bennett family was not a tragedy. It was a testament to the enduring power of love, the possibility of redemption, and the simple truth that it is never too late to come home. Emma had learned that lesson the hard way. But she had learned it, and she would spend the rest of her life making sure her children never forgot it, because family was not just blood, it was choice. It was showing up day after day, even when it was hard. It was forgiveness and honesty and the courage to love without condition. Emma Collins Bennett had once been a pregnant woman who thought she was alone in the world. Now she knew better. She was surrounded by love, rooted in history and building a future that honored everyone who had come before. She was exactly where she was meant to be. She was home,